3 minutes after 10 is the time, and if you think you may possibly have misheard the figures there that Simon shared about our current audience size, then you can, of course, rewind live radio on the Global Player and double-check that your ears did not, in fact, deceive you, which is quite a roundabout way of boasting without actually boasting, isn't it? But by now you would expect me to do a little bit of more explicit boasting as well, but I won't. I'll just say thank you. It means so much to me. And what goes up often has to come down. I'm always prepared for the balloon to start deflating, but it's pointless to pretend that it's not important and that it doesn't mean the world to me to know that more of you are spending time with me every morning than ever before, actually, in the history of commercial radio in the United Kingdom, actually, if you wanted to focus in on speech-based formats. That is the record that we've broken, and I couldn't do any of it without every single one of you. So thank you. But thank you also to my top team, whose names I can't remember. No, I'm joking. To Eleanor Walsh and to Keith True, who keep me company every morning and are every bit a part of the success that we are currently enjoying. 4 minutes after 10 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. And if you think that that's going to become a habit, you've got another thing coming. Let's start this morning with the Prime Minister. Shall I play you a couple of clips of Tories old and new? We've got Anne Widdecombe, the ghost of Tories past, and we've got Brendan Double-Barrel, who is the ghost of Tories present, both essentially circling the same sewer when it comes to the cost of living crisis. Shall we do Widdecombe first? Do you remember the law of Widdecombe? I used to say to you that if you didn't know what to think about a given subject, try to find out what Anne Widdecombe thinks about it and do the exact opposite. I think that still stands, although thankfully she's rarely seen out in public anymore. I don't know why some television producers decided to book her yesterday, but she clearly hasn't mellowed in her old age. Here she is, in danger perhaps of choking on the milk of human kindness.
What do you say to consumers who literally can't afford to pay even for some of the basics if they've gone up the way that cheese sandwich has with all its ingredients?
Well, then you don't do the cheese sandwich.
We're talking about basics. We're talking about absolute basics and staples. We're talking about own brand pasta. You're talking about bread. You're talking about families who cannot afford to feed their children. There's a story today about mothers who can't afford formula milk, so their babies are literally starving at the moment. And so the government
We've been through this before.
So the government shouldn't be doing anything.
Because we've been
years now. You would let the children go hungry.
Because we've been decades without inflation. We've come to regard it as some sort of given right.
Which is should the poorest and most vulnerable be helped out more when it comes out?
They are being helped out.
But especially on the idea of food.
I mean, they are being helped.
Anne Widdecombe there. There aren't any words, really, are there, at a time like this? You can't afford a cheese sandwich. Well, don't eat a cheese sandwich then. I think she calls herself a Christian, doesn't she? I don't know whether Brendan Clark-Smith practices any religion at all. He is the MP for Bassett Law. And he was on Ian Dale's programme. Was it last night or the night before? He was on with Ian Dale earlier this week. There you go. He was on with Ian Dale earlier this week. And he too is someone who almost defies description.
Heinz baked beans, say the price has shot up at that and people say, oh, this tin has gone up by 50% or whatever. Buy the Tesco value one.
No, but they don't taste the same. But if they don't you can't have baked beans that aren't Heinz.
Eating out of season as well, people wanting things all the way through the year. And you look at the environmental impact of that as well and talking about growing more things in your community and so on. So there is a real genuine argument there about your local communities and your local environment as well.
Brendan Clark-Smith, though, suggesting that if you can't afford baked beans, you're probably unaware of the Tesco value option. I think we should pause for a moment. We're going to talk more about Rishi Sunak than we are about Brendan Clark-Smith or Anne Widdecombe. But I think we should just pause for a moment to reflect upon how horribly detached you have to be, not necessarily from reality. The phrase out of touch is going to pop up a lot this morning. But it's worse than being out of touch. Being out of touch is forgivable. Being out of touch is perhaps about the view from the window that you have. It's the only window you have. You're looking out of the window and perhaps you're not seeing things that other people can see when they look out of their window. But this is worse than that because they're being told what other people can see. They're being told what the world is like for other people. And they're essentially displaying such an absence of care, such an absence of compassion or empathy or whatever you prefer to call it, that it is almost impossible for me to understand why they would want to go into politics in the first place. I mean, good God. We mentioned Christianity a moment ago, that the Bible talks about feeding the hungry. I didn't think I'd live to see an era in the United Kingdom where that became a political goal, feeding the hungry, a political goal that has opponents, like Anne Widdecombe. If you can't afford a cheese sandwich, don't eat a cheese sandwich. If you can't afford baked beans, you're probably somehow unaware of the fact that cheap baked beans exist. I didn't listen to that full exchange. I'm not entirely clear why Ian started talking about the undesirability of own brand baked beans versus Heinz. So, I mean, it is clearly, if you're down to pennies, if you're doing your shopping with an eye on every single column, not just on the pounds column, but on the pence column as well, then the idea that you would somehow be unaware of value ranges, of cheap options in supermarkets is, I think I'll use the word disgusting with your permission. I genuinely can't believe my ears when I hear things like that. And he's not the first to do it. It happens so often these days. I've forgotten the last one to actually publicly state that you should try cheaper options if you're struggling to feed your family. Wow. I may not need to ask you a question this morning now that we've set our stall out, so let me remind you of the phone number before I work my way to an inquiry. If you want to respond to what you've just heard, the number you need is 0345 60 973. I'm tempted to ask what is wrong with these people, but that wouldn't include Rishi Sunak, or would it? Because Rishi Sunak yesterday, on the way to Japan, he claimed that things were getting better. He didn't, as I suggested in my trail a moment ago, he didn't say that you've never had it so good. Even he wouldn't be that silly. But the attempt to portray the economic situation as positive, it really stuck in my craw. Claiming that people's household incomes were hugely outperforming expectations despite the cost of living crisis. Listen, I'm out of touch as well. I'm nowhere near as out of touch as Rishi Sunak. Even if I won the lottery, I would still be a long way away from being as out of touch with Rishi Sunak. But I don't feel, I mean, I can pay my food bills. So that makes me out of touch. We talk about what the phrase out of touch means. What is wrong with these people? And what to you does the phrase out of touch mean? Because he speaks like a banker. He talks about, I mean, for a start, they talk about forecasts being completely rubbish until they like them. So now he's talking about how the forecasts are actually being revised upwards. We've been told that things aren't, the big international economic watchdogs are telling us that things may not be quite as bad next year as they told us they were going to be, no matter that we're still estimated to come 20th in the G20 for economic growth and 7th in the G7. But I don't understand how anybody could sit there with a straight face and tell you, as someone who is struggling with high inflation, someone who is struggling with the cost of food, someone who is struggling with the cost of energy, that there are lots of signs that things are moving in the right direction. There are lots of signs that things are moving in the right direction. Asked to name Brexit benefits, this teetotalist man suggested that beer and sanitary products are cheaper. I don't think that's true. And even if it is true, there's 150 pubs closing in the first 3 months, closing forever in the first 3 months of this year alone. So even if beer was cheaper, where are you going to drink it if your local has just locked its doors for the last time? This phrase out of touch is one of those political phrases that I think gets overused wouldn't be the right word to deploy at this point, but I think it gets used into oblivion. It gets thrown around so much that we lose sight of what it really means. It's as if you can't see the wood for the trees. He's out of touch. Everybody's out of touch. He's out of touch. He's a champagne socialist. He's a billionaire. He's a businessman. He's out of touch. She's out of touch. She's out of touch. What does it mean when a prime minister looks at an absolutely abysmal economic landscape where people are struggling to stay afloat? It doesn't really matter what topic I choose in the morning anymore. The last time we did it, it was mortgages. People with mortgages, a constituency that historically you would define as privileged. But people having to renegotiate their interest rate, or rather sign a new mortgage as their last deal comes to an end, at multiples higher than their last one, 4 or 5 times higher rates than their last mortgage. We spoke to a lovely bloke with a catering business who doesn't know what he's going to do, 50 years old, working, paying taxes all his life, setting up businesses, entrepreneurial spirit, precisely the sort of character that Conservatives used to claim they represented most, and he is absolutely, I can't say that word on the radio, especially not with so many people listening. But it doesn't make any sense to me that a Prime Minister could turn around and claim that there are reasons to be cheerful. There are lots of signs that things are moving in the right direction. So we'll look at Clark Smith and Widdicombe, and we will ask this question. What is actually wrong with them? 0345 6060 973. When someone tells you that they can't afford a cheese sandwich, if your response is, well, don't eat a cheese sandwich then. What is wrong with you? 0345 6060 973. But with Sunak, he's being accused of being out of touch over cost of living. Am I going to get away with asking you what that means? What does out of touch really mean in this context? It's not the fact that he's so rich. There it is. Penny always drops if I hang around for long enough. It's not the fact that he's so rich. You may not agree with me on this, but I don't think that wealth is an obstacle to empathy. I don't think that wealth robs you of the ability to imagine what it's like to be poor. Neither do I go as far as to say that people should pay more tax voluntarily. I want to vote for a party that costs me more money in tax in order to distribute wealth more equally. And as I say, I'm a million miles away from Rishi Sunak's level of wealth. So it's not money that makes you out of touch. What is it? 0345 6060 973. In his case, I choose these words carefully. In his case, it's, I don't want to say an absence of humanity, because that's quite sweeping and quite crushing. But I think it is an inability to see the people behind the numbers. It's an inability to see the humanity behind the statistics. So he sits there, we presume, into the small hours with his spreadsheets and his laptops and his advisors and his forecasts, and he sees a little uptick over there, perhaps, in where the IMF think we will be by the end of next year. Or he sees a statistical improvement in the cost of energy. What he doesn't see is the difference between not being able to pay your bill, regardless of the statistical uptick in the cost of energy, not being able to pay your mortgage, regardless of what the IMF says about where we'll be at the end of next year. It's not an absence of humanity. That would be too cruel and too cutting a description. That, I think, applies to Tweedledum and Tweedledummer, to Anne Widdicombe and Brendan Clark Smith. There is an absence of humanity there that I'm keen to examine with your help, which is why question number 1 today is, what is wrong with those two? So categorically horrible in their attitude to humans, to voters, to people, to neighbours, to friends, to citizens. But with Sunak, why? What is he out of touch with? So that's the second question. And I'm going to throw in a third because I can. And the third is this. There are lots of signs that things are moving in the right direction with the economy. Those are the words of your Prime Minister. I want you to give us a brief example of something going on in your life that you think Rishi Sunak should be aware of. Because the Prime Minister, the pilot, if you like, is sitting there and telling us that there are lots of signs that things are moving in the right direction. I want you to tell him why you're not comforted by those words because of what is happening in your life at this precise moment in time. There are lots of reasons. There are lots of signs that things are moving in the right direction. Why are you not comforted by Rishi Sunak's words of comfort? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. It's 10:17. 20 minutes after 10. Good news. There are lots of signs that things are moving in the right direction with the economy, says the Prime Minister. What's going on in your world? What do you think the Prime Minister should be made aware of before he returns to the narrative that there are reasons to be cheerful? Or even perhaps stops flirting with the notion that you've never had it so good? Tom's in Bristol. Tom, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm a young man. I'm a 23-year-old man, out of uni, working class young man, first to go to uni. I got a good job, and then yesterday was told, sorry, we don't need you anymore. So I'm out of work at the moment. So obviously, the cost of living crisis is already sort of unmanageable. And for people like myself who are out of work and out of options, it's just, a big slap in the face from the government to sort of sit there and say that things are on the move, because they really aren't. And I think they're out of touch. Especially someone... Sorry, carry on.
What reason were you given? Why were you let go? Do you mind me asking?
Yeah, so for me, it was on attention to detail. I didn't live up to my performance, so wasn't able to pass my probation. To me, I think it was just a load of bureaucracy. Really, it wasn't the real reason. I wasn't given any specifics, but yeah, I think in relation to obviously the government's approach to the cost of living crisis, it's just they're just absolutely out of touch, arrogant, ignorant response to the situation that a lot of people. I'm lucky that
I'd use those words with Clark Smith, who is in Parliament, and Widdicombe, who of course isn't anymore. I think arrogant and ignorant is kind to describe what they said about sandwiches and baked beans and cheese. But I'm not suggesting sympathy for Sunak, but it's not necessarily a lack of empathy. It's just an obsession with spreadsheets and numbers. Yeah. It doesn't butter your parsnips, but does it make him as bad as the other two? To you, forget what I said, just in your heart, your feelings, as it were.
I think he's just, he was born into money. He's got money. That's all his life is, and he cannot have the empathy with people like myself, or people in, there's people in a lot worse situations than I am. And you can't sit there as the Prime Minister with £1 billion in the bank or near enough, and try and sort of come across that you understand, because you don't, regardless of whether he's the Prime Minister or he's not. Yeah. He's never going to have to worry about money. He doesn't know the day-to-day life of going to the shop, buying some bread, buying a pint of milk.
But it's not hard to imagine it. I mean, this notion that you can't imagine what it would be like. So Brendan Clark-Smith can't imagine what it would be like to not be able to afford beans. He presumes that if you can't afford beans, it's because you're so thick you were unaware that there were cheaper beans on the other side of the supermarket. And that is just a breathtakingly ugly personality trait. But Sunak, you could have £1 billion in the bank and you could still imagine what it would be like to not have enough money in your bank account to pay your rent at the end of the month, couldn't you?
Yeah, I guess you could, but I think the key word there is imagine. It's a fictionalized idea of reality, and a lot of people, don't have that opportunity to imagine what it'd be like. They have to actually live that day in, day out, and I think that's where the problem comes from. It's a highly fictionalized idea that they have. And then you play in the other angle, which of course is if you are in that situation, then it's your own fault, or it's because of choices you have made, or it's because of your fecklessness or your laziness or whatever it is. Because those, of course, are the other words that they use. I should have kept a record of recent contributions to this debate, because one of them said if you can't pay your way on your current income, then get a better job, get a better paid job. He said that before it emerged that Boris Johnson had availed himself of an £800,000 loan guaranteed by a distant relative and facilitated by a bloke who he made chairman of the BBC shortly afterwards. I mean, that, I don't know, double, triple, quadruple standards. Tom, take care, mate. I hope you're back on the horse sooner rather than later. I'm sure you will be. Lizzie's in St Albans. Lizzie, what do you think? Out of touch. It's an interesting phrase.
I just don't think he's got the life experiences, and he's never felt I'm sure he hasn't felt the real pain that a lot of people are feeling at the moment financially. And because of that, I just don't think he doesn't have the empathy. I'm sure he's brilliant with numbers, and I think he's a good guy. He's trying his best.
Do you think that? You do believe that? Because I mean, I don't think you can let him off his associations with Suella Braverman. She's possibly the most disgusting holder of high office that the country has seen, certainly in living memory, and he's putting 20p in her meter every morning. I don't know that I share your optimism about him being an okay guy in that sense.
Well, I mean, I think compared to what we've had, he's best of a sort of a bit of a really poor bunch. And we needed stability. And, I do feel that things are a little bit more stable in his hands than they were in the other two.
Yes.
And
you don't feel that he will tell you it's raining when it's not, which you did with Johnson.
Exactly.
And with Truss, she'd tell you it was raining when it was, I don't know, the hottest day. She just wouldn't have known whether it was raining or not. Bless her.
Yeah, exactly. But we need a prime minister that has really, really felt pain and financial pain, and really, yes, I do, and someone who really understands the vulnerable in society. So every policy that they're doing is to help those people, because they're the ones that really need the help. People living in poverty, people who are vulnerable in society.
And further up the ladder, because I don't think you're ever going to win an election by focusing entirely on the people who are most vulnerable in society. And of course, an awful lot of people don't want to be perceived as vulnerable. That's why the phone-ins with business people who are facing bankruptcy, or with homeowners who are wondering if they're going to be able to pay their mortgage when their current deal expires, is that these are. I'm not in any way denigrating what you say, but politically, the picture is slightly different. We all want a prime minister who cares for the homeless or the poor or the vulnerable, but that description now applies to people who would resist furiously the idea that description applies to them. In many ways, they've fallen for the Tory mantras about helping yourself and pulling your socks up and getting on your bike and all of that sort of notion of if you are struggling, if you are suffering, then it may somehow be your fault. I'm not defending Sunak. A couple of you accusing me of that. I'm just uncomfortable, perhaps for personal reasons, with the idea that if you are not personally experiencing privations, then you are incapable of empathy for people who are, because that would, albeit that my situation is a tiny fraction of Rishi Sunak's, I can't claim that I know what it's like at the moment to be worrying about making the mortgage payments or feeding my family. Thank you, Lizzie. That notion right there of financial pain, I wonder where Starmer fits in on this, because right-wing media, I cannot wait to attack him when he talks about his own background, which did involve not poverty, but certainly vulnerability, especially as his mother's disabilities got worse. He was not he did not come from a wealthy background. Even the fact that the school he went to became either a grammar or fee paying while he was there, they used that against him somehow. It's almost as if anyone claiming to have experience of difficulty is immediately derided as being dishonest or insincere, or in the case of Angela Rayner, the snobbery that kicks in with someone who truly does know what it's like to worry about paying bills at the end of the month or the end of the week is off the charts. It's another example, perhaps, of how gaslit we are as a society by these ideas and people. Thank you. It's 10:28. I'll squeeze in Alison, who's in Falkirk. Alison, what made you pick up the phone?
It's because you're talking about something that happened to me last week. Oh. My daughter phoned me up, breathless with shame and embarrassment, to ask me to help because she had no way of feeding her family or affording to live for the rest of this month after she'd paid her bills. She runs with no margin, and That's got worse. That's not getting better. That's getting worse. Everybody's margins are disappearing. Anybody who had, was just getting by, maybe putting a tenner aside here or there. So all it takes is a £500 power bill, your partner changing his job, getting a better job, as they say, but that means that the salary doesn't come in the way it usually does this month.
There's a window, isn't there?
On a tyre.
Yeah, a new boiler.
And because they work hard, they work bloody hard, both of them, they don't qualify, only just don't qualify for the £300 cost of living help, so they don't get that.
Look, plenty of people who work very hard do qualify for that. I know you're not suggesting otherwise,
they're on the borders of it.
Yeah,
so this month they would have qualified, last month they didn't.
Gosh.
So within the qualifying period, you fall through the cracks, because 1 month you qualify and 1 month you don't, and then if you don't qualify in one of the qualifying months, then you don't get the money.
Yes.
It's very easy to fall through those cracks, very, very, very easy. And you end up with somebody who's got 37 pence in her bank account to last her to her next pay packet. Yeah. So she can buy 1 tin of beans, not put fuel in her car, and not be able to feed her family of 4 for 4 weeks. So you can tell her how many value range goods are on the shelves, and she can't afford to buy more than one tin of beans for a month.
However cheap the beans are, and
it doesn't matter how cheap.
No,
the beans are.
I know that. How? I mean, okay, I'll ask you this question. You may not want to answer it. What is wrong with Brendan Clark-Smith that he could be so completely removed from the reality that you've so powerfully described?
I think what is wrong is that, and I know this myself.
Yes.
You can't imagine what it's like to have no margin.
Yeah.
You can't. So we all talk about the fact that you're only 1 month away from destitution. But actually, they aren't. And when they talk about value range food,
there'd be a safety net.
Thinking,
There'd be a safety net of sorts. You know, I mean, in a way, the fact that your daughter can ring you and you presumably were in a position to help her out a bit.
I was.
That enforces your position. But you know, how many people can't phone mum because mum's in exactly the same position as daughter?
Exactly. And it's when they stupidly separate all these things out. So talk about how much you pay for your shopping, ignores the fact that you're not just buying shopping. So there's my daughter weeping on the phone to me saying, all my bills are up to date. All my bills are paid, Mum. All my bills are paid, Mum. I'll scrimp, I'll save, I'll do everything. And I'm sitting there thinking, how do you afford a tank of petrol so that your man can get to his new job?
And when Rishi Sunak says that we are
things are getting better,
lots of signs that things are moving in the right direction with well, he might be technically correct. Should he stay silent, do you think?
I think he should be more realistic about the fact that people are already pushed over the edge of the cliff.
Yeah.
Things are not getting better. The ground has gone from underneath us.
That's beautifully put, and I'm sorry that you're in a position to be able to do that. And I mean, as you said yourself, there is light at the end of the tunnel for your daughter when the new job kicks in, and but that horror. A friend of mine, who I know very well actually, was talking about being behind someone in the queue at the supermarket who had to put stuff back because the bill for the family shop was £7 or £8 more than it was last week, and they didn't have the £7 or £8. That's what Alison's talking about when she's got the margin. And listen, if you're built like Anne Widdecombe, you can suggest she should have gone around with a calculator and had totted it up. But she does the same shop every week, and it had gone up enough in a week for her not to be able to afford it. So she had to put stuff back. What's the line? There are lots of signs that things are moving in the right direction. Thomas Watts is here now with your headlines. 10:37 is the time. James, Chris here. Don't give Sunak a pass. He was born into money, so he's never felt that dull, sick feeling in his stomach where you have gone hungry to feed your child. Nor have I, Chris. I think that's the point that I'm making, although I'm probably making it quite clumsily. Big Bob reminds us Sunak asked a homeless man what business he was in while serving food at a homeless centre. I'm just casting him in a different light from Clark-Smith and Widdecombe, who are clearly gross, suggesting to people that can't afford beans that they're too stupid to be aware of the existence of cheaper beans on a different aisle in the or the same aisle in the supermarket. So that's it. It's almost like you get hypnotised by Heinz, so you can't notice the Tesco value tins two shelves along. Incredible, really. Or Widdecombe saying if you can't afford a cheese sandwich, then you must go without. That's different. I'm not sticking up for Sunak. I'm just interested by what the phrase out of touch means in his context. So you watch that exchange with the homeless man at the homeless centre, and he's just... the problem is, every time I try and say he's trying to be human, I'm reminded of who the Home Secretary is. Someone who revels in her absence, her lack of humanity. Someone who dreams of deporting desperately vulnerable people to a country they've possibly never heard of with no prospect of return. Someone so utterly vile that sometimes you have to pinch yourself to make sure you're not in the middle of some sort of cheese dream when you look at the current cabinet. So that's all I'm saying. That Sunak is he, I'm asking, different? Is his out-of-touchness less obnoxious than the almost performative detachment from empathy that people like Brendan Clark-Smith and Anne Widdecombe have demonstrated this week? 10:39 is the time. Joe's in Epsom. Joe, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I was thinking about what you've just been talking about, and I'm not defending Sunak, but I feel that he lacks the skill set to actually imagine, to empathise. I used to work in the arts, and you would meet people who weren't creative.
Yeah.
They weren't imaginative. They weren't able to picture life in someone else's shoes. They were great at other things. They were maths people. They were, negotiators. And I just don't believe Sunak has that skill set. I don't believe he, either because experience or because that's just not his nature, his intelligence wiring, so to speak. He's not capable of it. And that, in a way, excuses him. But the challenge for him is to then surround himself and make sure he has people on his team who compensate for that.
What an excellent point.
And I believe where he's gone wrong is he hasn't. He's surrounded, because those people are going to give you...
He's hired the political editor of The Spectator and put Suella Braverman back in the Home Office. Not appointments that smack of someone desperate to understand what it's like to be on the wrong end of economic difficulties.
No, and those people will give you uncomfortable messages. They are going to say to you, look, I know what you're trying to do, but it's not working because of this. And at the moment, we know why, he doesn't want to hear that.
So what would he do then? I know we're completely speculating, but I think it's worthwhile. What would he do if he heard Alison? If he heard Alison describing her daughter, two people in work, just above the threshold for getting some of the help that's available with energy bills, but below the threshold in other months, in this month, for example, and unable to get any money beyond the 37 pence in her purse. Not someone who's sitting outside a shopping centre with a cap on the ground. Two working parents with children, obviously their parents, and running out of money. Or the caller last week, business person, 30, 40 years running businesses, just looking at the numbers now and thinking, I don't think I can carry on. How does Sunak process that? Because there's out of touch, and then there's, off the planet, off the charts. He can't be detached from that. He must be aware that that's happening. What does he say to himself that allows him to then say there are lots of signs that things are moving in the right direction with the economy?
I think you're trying to get a triangle through a round hole. I think he is full of round holes, and these are triangles, and they just don't fit. That he can understand to a point, but it won't sink deeper. It won't go to, your gut. I mean, we're all driven by our gut, and if it doesn't get through your brain... Does
he not believe it? Does he think that somehow it must be the fault of Alison's daughter, that they should have made better decisions, they should have budgeted better, like 30p Lee talking about nurses and food banks? They genuinely believe somewhere inside that it doesn't exist, and that if it does exist, it's because of something you've done.
I love my sister very much. She's a very intelligent person. But if you ever phone her up with a problem, she comes up with a solution. She's all about solutions. There's an answer to this, and you can get a self-help book arriving through the post if you're not careful from her. And it's like, no, sit with it for a minute.
Sit with my pain.
Sit beside me. Don't try and come up with. And I think he just isn't equipped
to do that. That's so interesting, Joe. That's so interesting. I was like your sister until I went into therapy, and I thought it was a strength. I think it was something you get taught at the kind of schools that me and Rishi Sunak went to, but other people learn the same lessons, obviously, in very different ways. But it's not an absence of empathy. It's a refusal to acknowledge vulnerability, because if I acknowledge your vulnerability, I might have to acknowledge my own.
You have to admit your part in it as well. You have to admit where you might be responsible or culpable for that. And that means showing weakness.
I'm just not going to go there. However ridiculous it looks from the outside, I'm just not going to open that door. I'm going to sit here on a plane to Japan claiming that things are looking pretty good, that there are lots of signs that things are moving in the right direction with the economy. And I'm just not going to open that door that Alison's daughter is behind.
Yeah.
And that's how you get away with it.
Is to recognise, the strength is in recognising that is something you're not good at, and then making sure people on your team compensate for that. And he hasn't got that.
Briefly, what's going on with Widdicombe and Clark Smith then? Because that's a different brand of human entirely, I think.
I don't even know.
No, fair enough. No, fair enough. I think that's us trying to put triangles in round holes again. It is beyond my comprehension. I listen. I don't know that I could promise an entirely polite exchange, but if you sort of think that you're on the same side of these conversations as Brendan Clark-Smith and Anne Widdecombe, I'm not that interested in having an argument with you. I'd love to know why you think that. Is that too? Am I over? I'm probably over asking again, aren't I? I just how do you end up thinking that if someone can't afford a cheese sandwich, then obviously the problem is them wanting a cheese sandwich, not broader economic issues, not the politicians who've been in charge for 13 years, not the reality that they're living in, but the choices that they've made. You know, it's 10:45. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. The number you need is 0345 6060973. My thanks to Chris in Tivits Hall, who read my mind, actually, even when I couldn't see it myself. So when I said there's out of touch, and I knew there was a figure of speech that I wanted to describe someone who's completely beyond out of touch, and Chris is quite right. It's out to lunch, isn't it? So there's out of touch and there's out to lunch. Clark-Smith and Widdecombe are out to lunch. Is Sunak? I don't think he is. I think he's just out of touch. And I thought Joe's analysis of why was actually very kind, very generous, very sympathetic. But of course it doesn't put any food on Alison's daughter's table, or perhaps yours. 10 to 11 is the time. James, please don't share my location. I work as a property photographer for various estate agents. This week I've been to 5 repossessions, i.e. the mortgage provider has foreclosed. That's 7 so far this month. I normally go to 2 or 3 a month maximum. That's from Tim in an undisclosed location. And Max says, the Tory ethos seems to be that hard work pays off. If you believe this, then by default, poor people haven't worked hard and deserve to be in the situation that they're in. With these beliefs, it's very hard to have empathy with people you believe deserved their situation. That applies to Widdecombe and Clark-Smith, and it probably applies to Sunak as well. He just hides it better. But he's not telling people to avoid cheese or buy cheaper beans. He's telling people that there are lots of signs that things are moving in the right direction with the economy. Now, if that's technically true, why shouldn't he say it? Why does it leave such an unpleasant taste in so many mouths? And what is it that he needs to know from you, from your world, that would make him perhaps think twice before offering up these platitudes? Manzoor is in Manchester. Manzoor, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello, mate.
How are you?
Pretty good. I'm off to Manchester tonight, actually.
Please do give us a call and pop round for a brew.
I will. I'll see you.
The kettle's on.
I'll see you at tea time. Carry on.
Please, honestly. Yeah, you know what, James? My family and I and the community, we run a community project helping families that are struggling. Yeah. We're not a registered charity, but we help people like Alison's daughter. Yeah. And that's what prompted me to call. I'm driving, I'm listening, I pulled over, and it breaks my heart to hear Alison, a mother speaking about her daughter like that. We all have these dreams and aspirations for our children, and to have this happening to your child, how can these people who are in charge, how can they not have this compassion? Where have we gone wrong?
If Rishi Sunak was listening to that, and there are many other people ringing in with similar stories, there's no absence of evidence of just how hard things are. If Rishi Sunak was listening to that, do I sound nuts to you when I say that his emotional response would be more sophisticated than Anne Widdecombe's? It doesn't matter, does it? Because he's not doing anything to help them.
He/they are doing nothing to help them or us.
Talking
or any
about
of us.
small boats and
telling us to tighten up our belts. It's like, it's okay for you to tighten your belt. You've got millions in the bank. And that's why we don't relate. That's why we can't relate to them and they can't relate to us and our problems. That's why they can have wishy-washy statements like, well, don't have a cheese sandwich. Like,
don't have a cheese sandwich. Or buy cheaper beans. Buy cheaper beans is worse in a way. It's hard to know what's going on in Widdecombe's head. But the other fellow,
James, we've been running this project now for 13 years, and we've seen things. We started to do what we do when Cameron and Clegg came into power. But we've seen things get worse year on year, and in the last 2-3 years since the whole Brexit debacle and everything, it's like poverty on it's fast track poverty. It's poverty on. steroids.
I do. I see. Is there light at the end of the tunnel? I know that's a fairly glib phrase, but if you've been doing it that long, then you've seen the tide come in and go out again.
At the moment, I'd like to think I've always been a positive person, and an optimist. But the way things are right now, I don't see any light. I don't see any light with the Conservative government. Don't see any light with the opposition. I don't see any hope in the opposition. I'm a lifelong Labour voter, but currently I feel politically homeless.
I hear that a lot. I've got a little bit more hope than you, but it's probably, hoping against hope, if you like, that things can't get worse and therefore must get better.
Do you know what it is? It's when you're dealing with families directly, the mothers and the children, and when you see those children and when you're dropping food off to these families, and it's the silence of the children that absolutely kills you inside, because children should be out making noise and playing, but when you knock at the door, it's almost like the children have been programmed because it could be someone collecting a debt or something.
And they're carrying stress as well. They're carrying trauma.
Major stress.
Trauma
and we know of people
that
have families who have lost individuals who have called it a day because they can't handle the stress of not being able to support their family any longer, and they've taken their lives. This is how bad things are, and these people sit there. They say they're in charge. Well, do something. We're living in a world of, it's just politics of words, and I'm sick of words. We need politics of action.
And those pledges that both party leaders come out with don't really look as if they're going to touch the sides of the kind of experiences you describe.
And we're all aware, and it's all, even the opposition, Keir Starmer, has made many promises as part of becoming the leader of the Labour Party, but we're all aware that he's reneged on all those promises already. And those promises are things that we actually need. Every single one of those promises that was made.
Which ones are you pointing at most?
Just stuff to do with the NHS or renationalisation of the energy companies and stuff like that. We need...
I do. The water companies today look pretty ripe for renationalisation, don't they?
Exactly,
but in the short term, it's not going to put food on the tables you describe, but in the long term, it categorically would. Can I ask you a weird question? I can't, because you're not a registered charity, I can't really give a shout out.
I'm not good at weird questions.
No, I can't give a shout out to the organisation you're running, because all I can go with, I would like to, but all I can go with is registered charity status as a gauge of everything being, ship-shape and Bristol fashion. But there's when I say weird, I just mean I might phrase it wrong, and don't get cross with me or get upset with me if I do. There's a threshold of sympathy where there are people that perhaps we almost expect to be below the line at which they would need the help of an organisation like yours. What I'm learning every day, what I've been learning now for some years, is that a lot of people who never thought they'd be below that line are finding themselves below it. They're kind of people that turn up at food banks almost in disguise, or the kind of people who can't cope in ways that you've described. How do you know where that line is? Alison pointing out that her daughter and her partner both work and they're both struggling. That's the big change here, isn't it? Even when food banks first became commonplace in this country, there was a sense that the only people using them would always be with us. But now it's extended. That line is rising up through society, I think, and more people ending up below it.
Well, we've relied on the support of families, friends and members of the community for almost 13 years now. Yeah. And even those who have been supporting us for many years, they themselves are now struggling. So even our donations have literally gone. I mean, for the first time in 13 years, in the last several months, I've had many occasions where we've had a referral come in from Manchester Council, Trafford Council or Tameside Council and their support agencies. But I've had to turn around and say, we've actually got nothing in. 13 years, and here we are, and I actually get referrals, and it finishes me off. It's like, we want to help. There's so much to do. Yeah. But when you turn around and say, I can't help, I've got nothing to give, James, it's difficult, because I know I've just turned someone away.
I can't imagine what that's like. But
mate, it's horrible.
I know it is, but try if you can.
It's distressing, and it's like, it really... It messes with your head, because I'm going to go home. I'm having to work 7 days a week at the moment, but that's fine. At least I'm working, but I'll go home to food, and I struggle. Some days I struggle.
When you struggle, try to remember how many people you have helped. more than most people listening to this programme ever will. I know it's a bit glib, and
I hear you, but James, you know what? What people should always remember is what keeps me kind of feet firmly on the ground. For everyone we help, there's another we've missed. So there's never any time for plaudits or pats on the back.
I hear you.
Ever.
I do.
We can say for every 1,000 we've fed, there's 1,000 we've missed.
But there are lots of signs that things are moving in the right direction with the economy. Mansour doesn't even touch the sides, does it? Thank you, mate. Not just for your call today, but for everything that you clearly do on a daily basis. It's there. That notion of out of touchness, if that's even a phrase, is beyond anything that we've come across before. It's moved into entirely new territory, and I think Mansour just described that territory in a way that the rest of us would struggle. We could try 1,000 times and fail. I often remind you at points like this in the programme that the Samaritans are available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year to talk to you and talk with you or just listen to you. Should you find yourself in anything like some of the situations Mansour described, their number, of course, is 116 123. It's coming up to 11 o'clock. It is Thursday, so Mystery Hour is on the way at 12. But I think in the next hour, we've got to have a look at the water companies, no? 3 minutes after 11. There is quite a short way to do this topic, this conversation about what the hell is going on with our water companies. And listen, you know that I'm not as informed as I should be. That's not fair. Be kind to yourself. I'm not as informed as I could be on Scottish politics and many of the differences between Scotland and England. I'd like to think I'm better qualified in that area than most English presenters. And by that I mean presenters who are both English and live in England. I think that Scottish presenters working in England are going to be a lot better informed on these matters than I am. But if you want to see what our water companies could look like, move to Scotland, where, as far as I mean, to the best of my knowledge, Scottish Water is publicly owned and is not suffering from anything like the problems that English Water is suffering from. But I don't know for sure. I do know this. There is something absolutely repellent about a sector that has taken untold sums of money from its customers, turning around and saying, we need more money from you to fix the mess that we have made. I mean, I genuinely can't quite believe what these numbers are. It is breathtaking when you see how much these companies have made, and indeed how much their CEOs get paid. And while some progress has been made, it's been made almost at gunpoint. None of these outfits do anything unless they have to. And that's the problem in many ways with free market ideology or the whole Tufton Street grift, which is designed essentially to represent the interests of the kind of people who've been getting massive payouts from water companies, while the amount of shocking amounts of sewage that are being pumped into our rivers has increased exponentially. So if you want to, I mean, listen, what are you going to do if you want to defend the status quo when it comes to the water companies? You're going to actually stand up yourself with your name at the bottom of the screen and say, well, what people have to understand is that there's nothing wrong with a bit of sewage. Didn't do me. I used to drink it. We used to have it for tea every Friday when I was a kid. A nice glass of sewage, and it didn't do me any harm. What are you going to do? How are you going to defend? Well, the answer is you set up something that you pretend is a think tank, and you give it a grand name like the Institute of Wizard Wheezes, and you hire some ingenue straight from Oxford who thinks that they're Ayn Rand, and you stick them on the telly. You give them a fancy title like Director General of the Institute of Wizard Wheezes or Head of Paperclips at the Taxpayers Convention or something, and you put them on the telly. You don't go on the telly yourself. You don't go on the telly yourself and say, well, I don't think we're pumping enough sewage. And so you can buy, listen, what are you complaining about? You can just buy Evian. Go and buy Evian or the fizzy stuff. You don't need water coming out of you. So what if the rivers are full of poo? Just go to your local swimming pool. Who needs to swim in a river? You're not going to go on the telly and say that yourself, are you? You're going to set up a think tank and get someone else who you pay secretly because you don't disclose who the donors are to the thing. You put them on the telly And the BBC book them, LBC roll out the red carpet, ITV will have them in like a revolving, and you get them to sit on the telly sticking up for the people that pay their wages secretly and whose interests they are dedicated to upholding. And that, boys and girls, is how you end up in a country where water companies are extracting the cash out of their customers while extracting the proverbial out of everybody in the country. £10 billion plan to stop sewage spills, while the figure, if you like, on how much they've taken out of these companies. And remember, they're monopolies. That's the maddest thing about this. The whole point about privatisation is that it is supposed to increase competition. And yet these companies don't have any competition. You don't have a choice. You can't shop around, can you? You know, turn your tap on and get a choice of 4 different waters and then decide which one you're going to sign up for. So they have a quite astonishing monopoly on supply and indeed on custom. And they have used it like mafiosi. They've used it like gangsters. They have just extracted money while presiding over decline and diminishment and disgusting levels of sewage being pumped regularly into our waterways. Do you know how many sewage spills there were last year? More than 300,000 sewage spills from storm overflows. More than 300,000. And even if they spend this 10 billion quid, which they're going to claw back from you, they are only going to aim to roughly halve it by 2030. The profits should bear the brunt. £1.4 billion in dividends paid to shareholders last year alone. Now, I went to the LSE, but I'm not an economist. Okay, I know more than enough about economics to work for one of those think tanks. In fact, I could go and work for one of those think tanks. You could call me head of economics. Head of economics. James O'Brien is head of economics at the Institute of Wizard Wheezes, and we've invited him into our studio now to uphold the interests of the kind of people that had a fat slice of the £1.4 billion worth of dividends that were paid out to shareholders in water companies last year. Just don't ask him, whatever you do, don't ask him who funds him or what his qualifications are. I told you what his qualifications are. He's the head of economics at the Institute of Wizard Wheezes. And he'll be coming soon to a studio near you. So James O'Brien, head of economics at the Institute of Wizard Wheezes. What do you have to say about the? It's the politics of envy. Well, I mean, £1.4 billion in the great scheme of things is a pittance. And yes, there are 300,000 sewage spills from storm overflows last year. And the idea that the shareholders in the companies responsible for that should be rewarded and enriched is, I'm afraid, perfectly natural. And if you don't understand that, it's because you're probably a member of the anti-growth coalition or the tofu-eating wokerati. How do you think the real world works? We live in the United Kingdom. We live in England. We don't live in utopia. We don't live in cloud cuckoo land. If someone offers me an opportunity to make a ton of money from a company that's pumping manure into the waterways of this country, then I'm not a communist. I'm going to take that money. That is what has happened. It is as simple as I describe it. And you'll allow me, I have very little patience with the kind of people who've spent 30 years telling us that we need to shut up about wealth distribution or we need to treat these dodgy think tanks as if they are august commenters on the state of the nation. Stop complaining about how much CEOs get paid. It's the politics of envy. The market will regulate itself, suddenly discovering that they bear responsibility for the state of our rivers and engaging in performative outrage at what has happened right under our noses and what people like Fergal, Sharkey and others have been pointing out for years. I wonder what the total 1.4 billion last year, and go back over the last 13 years and you're going to be looking at presumably even more than the 10 billion quid they're planning to spend now. So 10 minutes after 11 is the time. That's my analysis. Okay, that is the analysis, not of James O'Brien, head of economics at the Institute of Wizard Wheezes. That is the analysis of James O'Brien, gob on stick, friendly neighbourhood radio presenter, most popular commercial radio talk show host in the history of the United Kingdom. That James O'Brien. Okay, have I got it wrong? 0345 6060 973. Talk to me, please, about how I have ended up living in a country where shareholders in companies that are presiding over the exponential release of, I really want to use a dirty word, because I really want to use a dirty word. I often tell you that I want to use rude words. I often sound like I'm coming close to swearing. I don't think, I'd have to check Keith's blood pressure, but I don't think anyone really fears. But on this one, when I go shh, they are pumping shocking amounts of sewage into that. That I am so close, because it is a visceral word. I want you to smell it. I want you to be able to feel it washing around the waterways that should be much cleaner than this. I want you to know what it's like to watch it pumping into the sea, and to know that the people who own shares in the companies that are doing it are laughing all the way to the bank. Set this, if you will, against the conversation we had in the last hour. Who do you think Rishi Sunak is more comfortable with? The people who are trousering £1.4 billion in dividends from the companies pumping shocking amounts of sewage into our waterways, into our waters, or the people who are running out of money at the end of the month and can't even afford a tin of value beans? Don't separate them. Don't think these two stories exist in isolation. They are part of the same pageant. They are part of the same national tragedy. But I am conscious of sounding a bit undergraduate. I am conscious of sounding a little bit simplistic. I'm conscious, for example, of the fact that some of the shareholders trousering some of these dividends will be pension funds and will be organisations that we would look at warmly. And they are merely operating in a way that maximises the returns for their investors, who will not be billionaires and plutocrats or the secret sponsors of dodgy think tanks, dodgy lobby groups masquerading as think tanks. So I got two questions for you. Is that analysis correct? 03456, which is the same way really as saying how has this happened? How has this happened? 03456 6060 973. And the second question is, can I do that? Can I just say what's going on in Scotland? Does that, I mean, of course I can. I can do what I want. What's going on in Scotland? 03456 6060 973. So I tell you what I'm doing. I'm exploring the parameters of simplism, or simplisticness, if that's a word. Not simplicity, that's a different thing. I am exploring the parameters of simplisticness. Is it simplistic to say that this situation has arisen largely because of the factors I've just described? Overweening greed and ludicrous lack of regulation, supine governments, and an absurd subscription to bonkers free market ideology, even in a sector where there's no competition. 0345 6060 973. Okay? And also, as a way of mapping the parameters of simplisticness, is Scotland, on this issue and this issue alone, is Scotland just getting it right while England and Wales get it wrong? Hit the numbers now, you will get through. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. I'm also drawn to the claim that you have to pay these people huge sums of money, but today may not be the day to have that conversation. I'm not entirely sure about how to set it up, and I think there's an air of urgency surrounding sewage in our seas and sewage in our rivers that probably doesn't allow for a slightly, I don't know, not self-indulgent, but a slightly philosophical contemplation of whether Ruth Kelly, who is, I think, running Water UK now, whether she's right when she says you have to pay these people these epic sums of money, otherwise you don't get good people. I'm fascinated by that. I have been forever. I mean, look, in some jobs, then obviously it's a skill set that is quite hard to find. Not mentioning any names. It's not something, but in this sector, I mean, what would happen if you said to someone on 300 grand a year that you were going to pay them 200 grand a year? Would you suddenly run out of candidates? I'm not sure I buy that. Especially when really their success is going to be judged by not how much sewage is pumped into the river, but by how much money is pumped into the pockets of shareholders. I don't know. Maybe today's not the day for that bit of this conversation. Today is, however, the day for this bit. Well, how has this happened? How have we ended up living in a country where the companies responsible for pumping shocking amounts of sewage into our seas are simultaneously pumping £1.4 billion a year into the pockets of their shareholders? And is it naive of me to suggest that all we have to do, if we want to see how things could be improved, is have a look at Scotland? It's 11:16. 19 minutes after 11. A few people suggesting that with the new listening figures out there now, I could probably get away with a couple of shocking amounts of sewage. But Keith's shaking his head. Apparently, I mean, come on. It's an acceptable word, isn't it? Are you sure? Have you checked? I bet it is. I bet in context you can say, what can I say then? We're pumping... Anyway, pumping money into the pockets of shareholders while pumping feces. That works. Feces. Into the feces in the seas. Explain it to me. Andy's in Epsom. You work in this field, Andy?
No, I don't. I'm a retired fire officer.
I've got you mixed up with someone else.
Oh,
that's
sorry.
the problem when you've got 1.46 million listeners, Andy. You can't remember them all individually.
Well,
what would you like to say?
2 points, James.
Yes.
Back in the 70s, when our nice Mrs. Thatcher sold off all the utilities,
yes,
she actually gave the water companies away for nothing. And the explanation was that they would have to pay for complete rebuilding of infrastructure because of the number of leaks, which haven't stopped.
Yes.
And etc. Well, we haven't had one new reservoir since then.
Are you sure? I'm taking your word for all of this. There's no way I can double check, so I'm taking it on trust.
Okay. It's just that I'm an old man with a memory. And so they've not renewed the pipe work fast enough, obviously, because we still have many leaks. And we haven't dealt with the sewerage in the way...
So the idea was, you'll get it for a song, or indeed for nothing, according to your memory, because the amount of money you're going to have to spend on it is such that kind of counts as buying it, as paying for it. And then you can start pumping cash into the pockets of your shareholders.
Yep. And the second point I wish to make is I have every year a water bill, and it comes in two sections. One is to supply us with fresh water, which they do. And the second one is, sorry, probably the wrong word to use.
No, I'm allowed to say do. I can say do. It's the other thing I can't say, Andy.
Well, there you go. But the second part of the bill says to deal with our waste water and sewage. Well, obviously they're pocketing that, and they have been for 50 years, without doing anything about the sewerage. So why do they want us to now pay even more to deal with what they should have been dealing with in the first place?
Well, I mean, that's a rhetorical question, of course, and I share your sense of grievance. Could it have happened differently? I mean, could a regulator have ensured that they did spend the money on the things that they were supposed to spend the money on?
Well, I'm not qualified, but I would have said that would have been a fairly good idea. They have regulators in so many things. We have an Ofwat regulator. What are they doing?
That's a very good question. You say you're not qualified, Andy, and it falls to me to remind you that Liz Truss was Secretary of State for the Environment when
I thought you weren't allowed to mention that word beginning with SH.
That's not nice, Andy. That's not nice. 22 minutes after 11. You're probably a member of the tofu-eating wokerati with that. But no, point being, she was Secretary of State for the Environment when I think quite large cuts were made to the sector or to the watch. I could be wrong. Charlotte, I shall read this out because it's your birthday. And because she wrote, please read my tweet out because it's my birthday. It isn't moral, James. Private companies which make profits from providing essentials like water and fuel should be renationalised. They are destroying our planet and making profits from people who are already desperate and have no choice but to pay. This epitomises everything that is wrong with this country, which is why glancing... I was about to say that my listeners were letting me down, but as I glance at my screen, I can see Kirkcudbright, I can see Cumbernauld, and I can see the Isle of Skye. So the answer to the question of whether or not it is a little bit fanciful to think that all we need to do is have a little look at Scotland to understand whether things could be done differently, I think we will be answering that question quite soon. But I do want to know, is this how it happened? It is simply the massive prioritisation of profit over people. 0345 6060 973. Sue's in Norwich. Sue, what would you like to say?
Hello,
Sue.
I'd just like to say, in 1956, I got polio. It's thought I got it from the seawater at Southend, where my mum used to take my brothers and I bathing. Anyway, I spent the first 11 years of my life in and out of hospital, 2 years of it almost in an iron lung, which is, makes a tin of beans look positively luxurious.
Yes.
In my late 30s, I started to have problems, being very fatigued and other things, always falling over. it turns out I had something called post-polio syndrome,
right,
which is a rapid deterioration of the parts and the organs that were affected by the polio in the initial outbreak. I'm now 69, disabled. 2 years ago, there was a report on the news that the polio virus had been found in sewage in a waterworks. I think it was somewhere in London.
Yes.
And it was thought to have come back from somebody that had come back from a trip or holiday.
I remember. I think it was more recently than a couple of years ago, wasn't it?
Anyway,
that's not the point. That's not the point.
With post-COVID, with a lot of people questioning vaccine and being anti-vaccine and everything.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
Are they vaccinating it? Polio, people assume polio has been eradicated. It hasn't. Yes, there are very few, fortunately in this country, very few cases, but it is still there. And if they are dumping sewage into the seawater, into rivers and to places where people go in swimming, are we going to have another polio epidemic? Because believe you and me, it's not a party you want to go to.
I hear you. It was in June 2022 that the polio virus was detected in sewage from North and East London, prompting the government to urge the public to protect themselves by ensuring that polio vaccines were up to date, especially the parents of young children who may have missed an immunisation opportunity. So you make an incredibly powerful point from an incredibly personal perspective, Sue. Thank you. I won't ask you to wade into the politics of it unless you want to.
As far as I can see, the politics is it's all about the shareholders, their what do we call them? Their dividends and everything, and hang everybody else.
This is what Truss does, isn't it? This is what she does. Anyone who says that possibly this is not the way forward gets called a member of the anti-growth coalition or a member of the tofu-eating wokarati. There should be limits. There should be limits.
If there was another outbreak of polio, the cost to the NHS would be, well, it wouldn't even be thinkable about.
No, and I don't know that we're right to worry up to a point, but most people are immunised against it. It's not a jab, is it? It used to be a sugar cube. I don't know what it is now, but I'm just trying to Google while I'm talking to you the role that Liz Truss played in this when she was Environment Secretary. But I'm being scuppered by the fact that there is such a thing as a truss water tower. It's called a truss water tower because it uses a steel truss, and it's so I need a little bit more finesse perhaps on my Googling. Thank you, Sue. That's powerful stuff, and she's quite right. They did find it in the sewage in London last year, and it did prompt government to warn against the dangers of missing an immunisation opportunity. It's routine surveillance. Again, something the government does. That's an example of the state, the things that we pay for, that we don't even know are happening, but which are designed to protect us, or regulation and red tape, as Jacob Rees-Mogg likes to call it. Catherine's in Cumbernauld. Catherine, what made you pick up the phone?
Well, I live at Cumbernauld in Scotland, James, as you probably know.
I did.
And it's a totally different system up here. Now, I drink lots of water, and where I live, we live very close to the water tower. And at one point I felt there was a bit of a taste off of our water, so I called the water board and I said, I feel that there's something wrong with the water. Could someone come out and check it? So lo and behold, next day someone came to my house and tested the water, and they said, no, your water's absolutely fine. Oh. He went out and flushed it outside. And he said, no, water's absolutely fine. He said, it's because you're so close to the water tower that the things they add to it, he said, it's not having a chance to run off. He said, what I would suggest you do in the morning when you get up is turn your tap on, let it run for 20 minutes, and that should sort of clear the system a bit. So that was it. We don't have meters in Scotland. There's no one profits from it. And
it is a miracle, isn't it, that we can live, miles,
on the same island,
a few miles away from each other on the same tiny island, and yet most people listening to this in England will be completely unaware of what you describe.
Yeah, there's no one makes a profit in water here. It's there for the people. I mean, water should be free at the point of use for everyone. And we pay. Obviously, we do. The person who answers the phone
can't be completely free. You've got to pipe it. Someone's got to pay for the tower.
In our council tax, we pay for it in our council tax in our rates. But it should be free at the point of use, at the point of consumption. It should be free. We shouldn't have meters. People shouldn't be metered and have to pay for the amount of water they use.
Are you? I mean, we're 100% confident that Scottish Water is doing the business, are we?
I would say so. Yeah.
It looks that way. So you've got an economic regulator who sets the cost of the service independently. You've got a commissioner, a water industry commission for Scotland that establishes the lowest overall reasonable cost through a benchmarking exercise. There are private water companies operating in England and Wales, but Scottish Water can even appeal against the price-setting process via the Competition Commission. It's a statutory corporation that provides water and sewage services across Scotland, accountable to the public through the Scottish Government. So, I mean, there it is. You can do it, and you don't need to go to somewhere like Patagonia to prove that it can be done. You can just pop up to Scotland and have a look around. Unbelievable.
The quality of the water up here is second to none.
No, it's not.
No. So,
do you know where the best tap water in the world I've ever tasted is?
No.
Go on, have a guess.
Scotland?
No, Vienna.
No. Vienna?
Have you ever been to Vienna?
I haven't been to Vienna, no.
I'm telling you now, the water in Vienna, this is a little bit Alan Partridge, Catherine, but I'm up for it if you are. The water in Vienna is like nothing. It sounds like I'm going to finish this as a tongue twister, like the rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. The water in Vienna is like nothing I've ever tasted. I would go back to Vienna just to drink some more water.
To drink the water,
Just to drink straight out. I'm not even exaggerating. It's absolutely delicious. I don't know why. It's probably something to do with the mountains. But there it is. So I challenge your point. Scotland can be second to one. Only Vienna. It's 11:31. Thomas Watts is here with your headlines. 11:34. I don't know if you were listening yesterday. We had a bit of a disaster. And I worked out what we did wrong quite early on. I turned your attention at roughly 12:30 to the story about Year 6 students crying and suffering and even gnashing their teeth after doing their SATs, their KS2 English paper last Wednesday. And apart from one or two texts, nobody rang in to agree with the story. Everyone rang in to tell me that actually their children had found it all very straightforward, even perhaps in some cases easy. And I'll tell you what I did wrong. I forgot how reluctant we would be to portray our own children in a negative light. And if I hadn't read out a text quite early on in that process, claiming that actually it was perfectly easy and there was nothing to complain about, we probably would have been fine. But as soon as someone has rung in or texted in, so reading the text was the mistake, as soon as someone has texted in to say that was easy, I don't think anyone's going to ring in and sort of almost troll their own kid. Ring in and say, well, my kid's a moron. Do you see what I mean? It's obviously not the case. Some of the questions I think were really, really tricky. But if you're a student of phone-in radio, and I think today of all days I'm allowed to perhaps offer up a few words of analysis on why certain things work and certain things don't. That's why it didn't work. We went in too early on the, no, it's easy line, and that meant that people who had struggled, people whose children had really suffered as a consequence of doing this test, or indeed while doing this test, were less likely to ring in. So I've actually got some of the questions from it, which I thought I would share with you, and then we could find out whether or not we would have done well in it, never mind our children. If we've got time, I'll do that before Mystery Hour comes along at 12. Things are not quite as rosy in Scotland as Catherine would have had us believe, certainly in the provision of tap water. I've got no reason to doubt what she told me, but on the question of dumping sewage, there were 14,000 incidents in 2022. Feargal Sharkey, the patron saint of clean water in this country, described the horrendous new figures as laying bare the full scale of the horror and abuse of Scotland's rivers. So any hopes that Scottish Water might be some sort of paragon of virtue on this front have been quickly dashed by these figures from just last year, from just 2022, an unbelievable 14,008 times. That's about 38 overflow events every single day, the highest number of incidents on record. The only difference is, and it's a fairly big difference, is that is not unfolding against a backdrop of epic sums of money that could be spent on preventing the discharges, making its way instead into the pockets of shareholders. 11:37 is the time. Back to the phones. Dagmar is in Bath. How appropriate. Dagmar, what would you like to say?
Hi there, James. I agree with you about Vienna, by the way. I went there this spring and it was lovely.
It's amazing water. It's incredible, right? Do we know why?
I don't know. Does it come from the Alps somehow? I don't know.
Probably something to do with the Alps, almost certainly.
Something to do with that.
Yes.
So what I'm ringing about is really that where I am, sort of on the Wiltshire-Bath borders,
Yes.
I've witnessed a lot of apathy around me in the villages about this particular issue, and I always wonder why that is. Because you've got a river in nearly every village here around me, and they're beautiful. We've got like chalk streams and the lot. But people don't really connect with it unless they are direct river users, and I think that is the issue. They don't understand themselves as river users. There's a few kayakers, a few swimmers, but it is all a bit rugged, and people don't really connect with it.
I think you're right.
We've got waterworks in every village. You could demonstrate at these 60s monstrosities that nobody has refurbished for the last 80 years.
Well, we took a call not long ago from someone who I think might have been in Devon and was describing the fact that I think he had to pay. I forget what the juxtaposition of circumstances was that was so striking. I think he had to pay to have his septic tank. It's not called a septic tank, but you know what I mean. There's a tank where all his toilet goes. He had to pay to have that taken away. He had to pay quite a lot of money to have that taken away to a processing plant. But on the days when the sewage was being pumped directly into the waters, he could see it from the end of his garden.
Yeah, and people don't. But what they worry about around me, and I hope my neighbours are listening, they worry about hosepipe bans, and they always think there shouldn't be any. And of course, we had them far too late last year. And in some areas we didn't have them at all. So our rivers around us actually ran dry, our streams. And that exacerbates the problem with the sewage, because you have less flow the more you take the water out. Yeah. And that's what people worry about. They worry whether they can water their garden. And I don't understand that disconnect. I went to see my MP in Wiltshire, Dr. Andrew Morrison, and he said, well, the stuff has to go somewhere. That's what he told me.
Yeah, that's not ideal, is it? We put it in his garden. Yeah. It's got to go somewhere. Could you imagine that? If you just turned up and dumped it all in his garden and he started complaining and you said, well, it has to go somewhere, Dr. Morrison.
So why do you think people aren't up in arms?
Well, I think you've told us. I mean, they are. There's a level of anger accompanying this story now that is growing daily. I think part of the reason people are not up in arms is because they don't get the information that they need, and the reason why they don't get the information that they need is that much of our media is, of course, in bed with precisely the sort of organisations and institutions that like to prioritise profit over people. But also, most of us don't come into contact with water. So there's an outlet near Hammersmith Bridge in West London, not far from where I live, and there was a day not long ago where it was like I wish I could use some rude words, some Anglo-Saxon words, Dagmar, because it was a fountain of feces. It was a fountain of feces. There you go. That's got on it. I mean, you could see it. It was going up 10 or 20 foot in the air because of the pressure on the storm drains. It was absolutely disgusting. You see something like that. I guess to answer your question, if you could see that every day, then we would probably be treating this issue with the seriousness and the urgency that it deserves. But even though we know it's happening every day, it's not an actual fountain of feces. If we had a fountain of feces on every stream and river in this country, visible and frequent, a frequent fountain of feces, Dagmar, that's the answer to your question. We don't realise how bad it is.
But you have a bunting of what could I call it? Sanitary pads along the rivers, even when there's no fountain of feces.
Yes.
You can walk along it, and every second tree has the stuff hanging off it. And people don't understand the connection. They see it, but they don't know
there
what
it is. They don't understand the connection because it's not being properly explained to them, and that is probably the first thing that has to change. Good grief, I hope no one's having their brunch at the moment. That was a particularly unpleasant combination of imageries. Thank you, Dagmar. Take care. Jonathan's in Hinckley. Jonathan, what made you pick up the phone?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk to you about the complete incompetence of the water utility companies in our area.
Yes, carry on. I don't think it's unique to your area, but hey-ho.
No, it was a very interesting conversation, but we've had a problem since 2017, which is still ongoing now. Basically, the sewage pipe that runs through our garden leaks into the soil. They came and did an excavation about 2 years ago now, and it's caused a problem to the clean water system for us and our neighbours. We've had no water in the property since the 9th of January.
Good Lord. How did you, if you bear in mind some people might be eating, how did you realise that there was a leak?
Just the smell in the air. I mean, the whole of the town could smell it.
Is the store coming from your garden?
Yes.
Oh, mate.
That's correct.
That's horrible. And do you understand?
It's quite embarrassing as well.
Well, it's not your fault, but I do understand why you might say that. Do you understand how exploring the state of the sewage pipe has resulted in your water supply being cut off?
Yeah, I mean, they basically had to do a repair in our garden.
Yeah.
So they were driving 14-ton diggers up and down the path. And I believe it's pinched the pipe and created a leak. But then, of course, because it's a private pipe, it's our issue. So I've had to pay excessive amounts to have a new feed put in, which we're still waiting for them to connect.
How many neighbours have you got?
It affects 9 properties.
9 properties. So it's like a little development, is it, where you've got some of the supply is private rather than municipal?
Yeah.
Or would that apply to everybody?
It's a row of 1930s terraced houses in the middle of a town.
Oh, okay. I don't quite understand why you have to pay for it if they broke it.
Well, nor do we really. But it's something that we just need to get repaired so we've all got water again.
You can't faff about in court, can you? No. And what has it been like living without a water supply, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, my days consist of, since the 9th of January, filling buckets from the outside tap because there's just enough pressure to fill a bucket, taking it upstairs, up a ladder into the loft, dropping it into the tank, allowing it to heat up. My young lad had SATs last week, so...
How did he get on?
He did really well.
I knew it. Sorry.
No, I mean, to try and keep things normal for him.
Of course you do.
Fill up a hot bath, then a bucket of water in there.
Of course you do.
And it's absolutely ridiculous.
What water company is that in Leicestershire?
Severn Trent Water.
Severn Trent, that's the same. My mum uses that as well. I mean... That's it, isn't it? I think to answer Dagmar's question, if a couple of million people were experiencing what you're experiencing, then we'd be seeing the sense of urgency that's clearly needed to get these outfits to sort themselves out. And of course, instead, they're going to spend £10 billion on stopping the spillages. That wouldn't help Jonathan's situation. And then we're going to be footing that bill for the next 100 years, while no one mentions the £1.4 billion in dividends they took out last year alone. 11:45 is the time. It is 11:49 and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where the state of the water companies concerns us, but with a strange sense of impotence perhaps, given that the 10 billion quid that they're finally going to spend on sorting out these problems is going to ultimately come out of our pockets, while the flow of money into the pockets of shareholders seems unlikely ever to be stemmed. Nigel is in Bewdley, which Nigel probably doesn't know this, but Bewdley is probably the area that introduced me to the notion of flooding. The houses by the River Severn in Bewdley used to routinely get flooded. I don't know whether that situation has been improved, but it's...
Well, Tony Bennett-Blair gave the money to build a flood barrier, so that goes up every time the river comes up now. So
is it all sorted?
Not quite. They're going to build another one on the other bank, on the other side. But
lovely part of the world.
It's impressive.
Lovely part of the world.
I live 50 metres from the water as well.
Which side?
I live on the Bewdley side.
Not the Black Boy side.
No, it's called the Bewdley Inn now.
Have they changed the name?
Objected. Anyway, I called
There's
in...
a topic. That's not what you rang in about, Nigel. I'm more of a pack. Is the pack horse still there, up near the old Catholic church?
The pack horse, yes, it is.
There
it's
you
just
go.
Reopened.
That's a lovely part. I very recommend a pint in there. Anyway, back to the water companies.
So I called in a few months ago about the Trump's attempt to the MAGA lot to try and kill off American democracy. But I'm pretty disgusted with Labour's attitude to water, because when Keir Starmer was asked were Labour going to renationalise water, he said we can't afford it. But I've got a simple solution.
Go on.
My PhD is in computer modelling. I've spent my career in corporate modelling all over the world, and things like which airplanes to buy and mergers, acquisitions.
Oh, yeah.
All we have to do is use the legislation to fine the water companies more than their profits.
Yeah.
So their share price drops to zero, and we buy the water companies for £1, and then they become, renationalised, as it were.
I mean, I'm always slightly wary of ideas that sound too good to be true, but certainly the first half, the notion of punishments being so absolutely severe that they almost wanted to give back the keys, seems to me to be quite straightforward.
That's the way to do it.
I think you're right.
We don't enforce the regulations. They are breaking the law. And the MPs that voted against increasing the fines should be named and shamed.
When was that? I should look
That was it 2 years ago? And I won't name any names, but because I'm a rower, I've been rowing since the age of 16. I started in Bewdley.
Did you?
So we have children rowing on the river that could fall in any day and into, polluted water.
Is it bad? I mean, is it visibly bad?
I just said to your researcher, when we get off the water, we have white boats, and there's a little brown line along the length of the boat. Every day now. We used to get it on bad days.
I was going to say, how has it changed? And the simple thing is, what would have been extraordinary is now ordinary.
Well, I'd like to get a university to come and take swipes off our boats and analyse what's in there. It may just be
mud,
farm waste or stuff.
Yeah.
But I rode on the Thames for 40 years as well in Henley.
Did you?
And we used to get sewage coming down. You could see usually the sewage has like a froth to it. And so, when there was heavy rain, we'd get lots of sewage coming down through Henley from the.
Can you pinpoint the moment that things changed? Like notice it as a.
It's just got gradually worse.
It's been incremental, has it?
Yeah.
Okay, gross. Yeah. It's grim, isn't it? Do you still row?
Every day.
Wow.
71 years old.
You're making me homesick, Nigel. You're making me homesick.
Well, you made me homesick. I lived in Henley for 40 years after 9 years in California. And I came back to Bewdley because you kept on about Kidderminster, my local area.
Well, fantastic. I should be on commission. You're lucky, man. I love Bewdley. I really do. 11:53 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. There it is. I thank you, Nigel. I've got loads of people still wanting to talk about this. I suspect Sheila will return to it. We're going to move on to Mystery Hour at 12. I'll squeeze in Tom, certainly, maybe a couple more calls as well. But before that, I just wanted to look at the SATS test. So look at Harriet's answer beginning, it's actually very appropriate, and find and copy one word that is closest in meaning to eat. I am not suggesting that the children who were disturbed by the difficulty of this test either don't exist or shouldn't have been disturbed. I just thought I'd share with you. So you're trying to find one word. You're only allowed one word that is closest in meaning to eat. And this is for 10 and 11-year-olds. Ready? It's actually very appropriate that you call it a hotspot. The gap underneath the bridge are a perfect place for mother bats to raise their young. Baby bats are born hairless and have only a few months to develop before travelling south in autumn. They need somewhere warm and safe, and the gaps under the bridge are just the right width to trap warmth nicely. These bat pups need to spend their energy on growth, not on keeping themselves warm. Texas in general is a paradise for bats because of all its tasty insects. A mother bat will go out hunting every evening and consume about 2/3 of her body weight in insects every single night to meet her energy need. The feeding frenzy can last all night. So you've got to find the one word from that paragraph, that excerpt, that best fits the description of being closest in meaning to eat, E-A-T. What word would you have picked? Text it now to 84850 and we'll conduct a live scientific experiment on whether or not that is an unfairly difficult question. For the record, I think it is. So I read it to you. I'm not reading it to you again. Oh, all right, I will. I'll read you the final... I'll read you the final 3 lines of it, okay? Texas, in general, is a paradise for bats because of all its tasty insects. A mother bat will go out hunting every evening and consume about 2/3 of her body weight in insects every single night to meet her energy need. The feeding frenzy can last all night. Find and copy one word that is closest in meaning to eat and text it to 84850. 11:55 is the time. Listen, Global Player's back on again, but when it goes down, I don't know why you text me, because if I talk about it, you won't be able to hear me. So it puts me in a sort of weirdly Star Trek-y scenario where I know that I'm here, I check, and I know that you can't hear me, and it's great that you're texting me to tell me that you can't hear me, but how will you know when I get your message if you can't hear me acknowledge your... Anyway, Tom's on the Wirral. Tom, back to the waterways. What do you reckon?
It's a bit of a complex one. So... really, the reason why it was privatised in the first place was because the government introduced regulations which made it really expensive to bring it up to standard.
Yeah.
And they realised they didn't have the money for that. So the only reason
hang on, how can they not have the money for it if they're giving £1 billion a year to their
That was before that.
Right.
So it was at the start. So it was the early 90s, late 80s.
Oh, I see. Yes, when it was originally privatised.
Yeah, when it was originally privatised. However, it's a bit of a slippery slope at the moment. So I'm not particularly happy with them myself at the moment.
No.
But what I would say is that it's a huge improvement on what we've previously had. So I'm lucky enough to be right by the Mersey. And many years before privatisation, what we were finding was huge fatbergs floating down the Mersey. Yeah. Sorry, James. Yes, so huge fatbergs would be floating down, and you have a lot of heavy metals which would be getting put into the river. And thankfully, now after privatisation and a lot of investment, the river is an awful lot cleaner. I know it's not the case for everyone's river out there, but it is a significant improvement on what it previously was.
Fair enough.
So,
that's good to know. So there is light at the end of the tunnel, if you like, as opposed to something that rhymes with light in the middle of it.
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully.
Thank you for that. And but finally, Becky in Bristol. Becky, what would you like to say?
Hello.
Hello. Oh, we'll never know. I think the phone line's gone funny. That's terrible, Becky. I was really looking forward to hearing what you had to say. I don't know if we're going to be able to fix it in time. And everyone has gone, or almost everyone has gone for consume. You could actually have had feeding. Also, I can't believe how many people have... Good, look at this, Keith. That's astonishing how many people have bothered reply. But quite a lot. I'd say about 10% feeding, 90% consume. Both answers would have been acceptable. So I don't know why I chose that one. It doesn't illustrate anything. I told you this was a disastrous topic yesterday. It's not getting any better today. OK, here's another one. She wriggled back inside the tent. What does this tell you about how Priya got inside the tent? Tick one of the following. So she wriggled back inside the tent. What does this tell you about how she got inside the tent? Tick one of these. She ran quickly inside. She jumped through the flap. She had to squeeze in. She crept in quietly. The answer was that she had to squeeze in, but the teacher believed that many children would have chosen crept in instead. And on it goes, to the bafflement and befuddlement of teachers, parents and pupils alike. But if you're ever going to do a radio phone-in on children struggling with an exam, do not begin it by pointing out that lots of children found it easy. Because if you do that, no parent is going to ring in to portray their little treasure as being somehow deficient. Just a little discovery I made yesterday after 20 years almost of doing this job, and a timely reminder for all of us that however well things are going, there is always room for improvement, and nobody is ever the finished article. With the possible exception of Mystery Hour, which is about as close to perfection as you can get on the radio, and I will prove that to you shortly. If you want to get involved, you know what to do. If you're not familiar with this feature, then I think you're in for a treat.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Mystery Hour with James O'Brien.
Good grief, is it that time already? 2 minutes after 12 on a Thursday can mean only one thing: your weekly opportunity to achieve the sort of satisfaction not ordinarily available anywhere else on your radio dial. If you're not familiar with this part of the week, then it will not sound as exciting as it actually is to listen to, because all I can say to you is this: some people ring in with questions and other people ring in with answers, and somewhere between those two positions alchemy occurs and pure gold is spun. If you don't trust me, all you can do is stay tuned. My favourite contribution of the week, my favourite contributor of the week, will be the lucky recipient of a brand spanking new Mystery Hour board game. An invention of incredible excitement that delivers joy unconfined into households up and down the country. If you're not lucky enough to win, don't worry, you can buy one yourself. Yeah, full details at mysteryhour.co.uk on how to get hold of your own Mystery Hour board game. And full terms and conditions for what is actually a competition, even though the management's decision is final, and I am the management. I am the law. That is at lbc.co.uk. 4 minutes after 12 is the time. Gus is in Colchester to kick things off. Gus, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on, Gus.
So I wanted to know, do birds get any better at building their nests over time, like generationally?
That's an interesting question.
Oh, thanks.
No, I like it because you see some, don't you, that look a bit rubbish.
Well, it's not. I'm not so much. I don't know about the nests like the finished product, but I've noticed that the birds sort of hop around our mess of a garden, and they seem to like choose certain bits of twig and grass and discard others. And I wondered, if that's a sort of generational thing. Does that mean that by extension they get better?
And there are, some species are better than other species. Massive birds are not going to build a really neat, tight nest, are they? They're not like so.
I don't know. I don't want to get into body shaming, really.
No, it's a fair point. We should be careful in this day and age. I'm a big fan of swans. It's gone a bit partridge again, and not last season. There was a little bit by the canal in Brentford where they built a nest near some of the houseboats, but in one of the closed off bits. So hardly any humans went past, but you could just lean over a relatively small wall and you were about 4 foot above it. So you got this astonishing, having one of those cameras off the telly in the actual nest, you got this astonishing perspective on the nest and the cygnets, and you followed it. They lost one cygnet. I was very, very sad. And then things all went a little bit weird. I think he cleared off, left her on her own with 2 cygnets. He went a bit mad and started hanging out on the other bit of the canal. But that's a different story. And that was a mess.
The board game.
It was it was a mess, Gus, that nest. An absolute mess. But I presume that's because swans don't need a massive nest. And it was flat, it was on the ground. They just need a sort of area in which to lie down. I love that. Do birds get better at building nests as they get older? You'd expect them to. 6 minutes after 12 is the time. Heather is in Broxburn in Scotland. Heather, question or answer?
A question, please.
Carry on.
Is there any animal that can see microscopic things?
It's all gone a bit David Attenborough this week, hasn't it? We've got birds' nests, and now, by microscopic, what do you mean? Like amoebas?
So, like bacteria and things that the human eye can't see. Because I know that animals can see, like in the UV perspective, and they can see faster than humans. But can they see smaller than humans?
What sort of animal might fit into that category? What do you think? Do you have anything in mind?
I know that hawks can see much further than human eyes can see. So
I know that.
I bet you also see smaller than we can see.
But bacteria, stuff that a human would need a microscope to see. Is there any animal that can see it with their naked eye?
Yeah.
Seems unlikely, Heather.
Maybe. Just curious.
No, I am now as well. Is there any organism that can see... Well, what about other microscopic... Well, they don't have eyes, do they?
No, I don't think so.
You don't get amoebas.
Multicellular life would have eyes.
Is there any organism that can see with its naked eye... Well, it wouldn't just be other organisms. It would be anything so small that a human would need a microscope with which to see it. We shall find out. Julie, I'm not sure it's helpful for you to point out that birds of prey can see little mice. A, we knew that, and B, it's got nothing to do with microscopes. 7 minutes after 12 is the time. Louisa is in Birmingham. Louisa, question or answer?
I have a question, please.
Carry on.
So on my travels, I've realised that Chinatowns and gay villages, or people who are from East Asia and queer communities, often settle next to each other in cities. And I'm curious why those two groups are always next to each other.
Can I ask for your evidence of this?
So Soho in London, it's the same in Birmingham and in Manchester, and I read that it's the same in Toronto as well.
Is it the same in Birmingham?
Yeah. Yeah, the Chinatown and gay village all on one road.
I didn't know there was a gay village in Birmingham. You're right about Manchester. I can picture it now. You're right about London, obviously. I'm in it. I'm in Leicester Square at the minute, so that's pretty clear. I didn't know Birmingham even had a gay village.
It does. It's very good.
Whereabouts is it?
Hurst Street.
Near the China... Yeah, gosh, you're right. Yes, yeah, there you are. There must be a reason. Probably areas that were quite run down and cheap that could be colonised more easily than the bits of town that were already very well established and expensive, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Probably.
I'm just curious that those two groups seem to be partners.
Yeah. No, I like it a lot. That's a lovely question. I shall put it on the board. Why do Chinatowns and gay villages so often exist or spring up next door to each other in big cities, Western cities chiefly? 9 minutes after 12 is the time. Thank you, Louisa. Kevin is in Colchester. Kevin, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on. That's a terrible phone line. It's not your fault. We'll try and get you back up. But just because Chinatown and the gay village in New York aren't next to each other doesn't undermine the fundamental premise of Louisa's question. It does happen more often than not. So I'm going to leave the question on the board. We're going to try and improve Kevin's phone line, and we're going to go to Ravi, who's in Wokingham, and ask question or answer, Ravi?
Question, please.
Carry on.
Why do we celebrate birthdays and not birth anniversaries? So you would say happy 10th birthday or happy 30th birthday, but we don't actually have 30 birthdays, but we always celebrate the anniversary of a birth.
So when you're 1, you're 2? No.
Yeah.
Yes. So your birthday is 0. Your first birthday is 0. Well, you celebrate the number of years you've been alive, don't you?
No, so in terms of you celebrate the birthday, so you say happy 10th birthday, but actually it should be happy 10th birth anniversary.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we've touched this before, and I was just as confused then as I am now by, and I'll put this politely, Ravi, by why you care.
It was my girlfriend's birthday the other day, and we were listening to a repeat of last week's Mystery Hour as we were driving to the restaurant.
God, showing her a good time there, Ravi.
It's a lovely pastime.
It's a lovely
we both
tradition.
share together.
I like it a lot. I love that. Play a small part in your romance. I think there are cultures where you do it differently. I think there are cultures where it is this is the first anniversary of my birthday. But the question as to why we do it like we do it, I don't know if it's answerable. I'll find out for you. I shall try to find out for you.
Thanks.
No, thank you. Why, I'm just worried people might not quite understand the question. You only have one birthday. That's it. So why do we call it birthday? When it's not your birthday, you only have one birthday. It's your birth anniversary, so it should have a different name. Why is it called a birthday when it's actually the anniversary of your birthday? There you go. There's the question. That's slightly different from what was asked last time, I think. Mark's in Colchester. Mark, question or answer?
Question, James.
Carry
please.
on, Mark.
Right, I snore so loud, my wife hears it over the TV she's watching downstairs.
Good grief,
How
man.
am I? Yeah, I know, it is terrible. How am I able to sleep while I'm making such a noise?
Do you ever wake yourself up?
Not knowingly, no.
Do you ever do you ever get woken up and she says you're snoring and you do actually recognise that you were snoring? You sort of are conscious of the snoring in that last few nanoseconds before you achieve consciousness.
Maybe if I fall asleep on the settee, I can't say I've ever noticed it in bed at night.
No. Why don't you wake yourself up? Because if someone else came in and made the same level of noise next to you, it would probably wake you up.
Yeah, but it doesn't wake me up. I don't wake
But why
myself
don't you wake
up.
yourself up with your own snoring? I like that question. I'm amazed we've never had it before, which means we almost certainly have, but I've forgotten, which is a good enough reason to consider. Thank you. I mean, have you tried... I mean, sorry, this is a bit boring for you, but have you tried anything to improve the situation? It can't be much fun for your wife.
Well, no. I mean, she punches me, she pushes me, she can't wake me up.
Yeah, but when you're snoring...
Yeah, you know, when I'm snoring, she records.
Have you looked into sleep apnea?
No, I haven't.
Look that up.
Yeah, maybe.
So, because it can be quite dangerous. I mean, if it's really, really loud, it's worth having a look at that. Seriously, someone told me that when a similar topic popped up on the programme. Not for me, but for another caller. 12:13. Thank you, Mark. So, why doesn't Mark's snoring wake him up? When if you went into his bedroom at night and made a similar level of noise, you would almost certainly wake him up. Why do we call birthdays when they're not actually birthdays? You only have one birthday, the day on which your birth occurs. Why are Chinatowns and gay villages often, not always, next door to each other? Are there any organisms that can perceive microscopic organisms with the naked eye? And do birds get better at building nests as they get older? Carl's in Prescott. Carl, question or answer?
Hi, James. Love your show. How you doing?
Mate. Very well. What have you got?
Right. This is a bit of a mad one, so please forgive me.
Go on.
Do you know, constantly there's data being transmitted, either from your mobile phone to a satellite or from a satellite to your GPS in your car.
Yeah.
Is there currently a system that sees it visually?
What do you mean?
Like, we can't see infrared, but is there any sort of way of seeing what all this data floating around looks like in a visual representation?
So if the police are tracking someone, they can use the phone's location because it sends out a signal and you triangulate it to... So you mean the signal, the signal that is pinging from the phone to the tower, is that in any way visible?
Yes. Is he currently a system anywhere that sees what this looks like? I'm fascinated by the amount of debris that flies around the Earth, and there's companies that track it so they know it's safe where to fly, etc.
Yeah.
And when you see the visual computer models of what it looks like, you think that's incredible. Is there any sort of computer visualizing model that can see?
So it would be a satellite. It would be software.
Streams?
So the hardware would be a satellite, and is there any software that allows you to see the ping or the data or whatever?
The data transfer up and down from either from a phone to a mast or a GPS in your car or your watch, because it must be so much stuff.
Well, it's constant. We'd be walking through a fog, wouldn't we, if we could see it?
Exactly, that we can't see, but is there a way of seeing it?
Why do you want to know?
I'm just interested.
Yeah, I am now.
There you go.
No, seriously. And I understand the question. I was a bit worried when I saw it on the screen that I wasn't going to be able to understand what you were talking about, but it's a fairly straightforward one. So your data, the phone is the best example. Anything that uses GPS, anything that allows you to work out where you are simply by looking at a screen. So, Google Maps, is how does it know where you are? Because it's your phone is sending, your device is sending and receiving information. Is that information in any way discernible if you've got like the right lenses or the right software or the right technology? I doubt it, but you never know. It's worth asking. It's 12:15.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien. Call 0345 6060 973.
It is 12:19. It is Mystery Hour. It is unfolding. I did a quick run through the questions that are already on the board, didn't I, a minute ago? So I won't do another one. I shall save that for a little later. Let's go to Australia. Sam's in Mandorah. Sam, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on.
I'm not sure if anybody's going to have the answer for this one, but what do newborn babies dream of?
Milk, probably.
But it's now 7-month-old we've got. But when she was newborn, you could certainly see that she looked like, how when you see a dog dreaming, we always say like they're chasing rabbits.
Yeah.
It was a similar sort of thing. So, but they've not got the experiences or language or things. So,
they've got enough experiences, really. They just dream about what they have got experience of, I suppose. But I don't know. And like you say, who would know?
Yeah. That's going to be the question.
Maybe someone with like you do occasionally meet people with phenomenal memories who can like literally remember stuff that happened in very, very early childhood. They might know, but it seems unlikely. I'll put it on the board.
Okay.
What do newborn babies dream of? And is there any way ever of knowing? Thank you, mate. There's an interesting mixture of questions this week. I like it. But of course, I may go off it if we don't start getting interesting answers. Neil's in Dublin. Neil, question or answer?
It's an answer, please.
Carry on.
So it's to do with animals seeing microscopic creatures.
Yes.
So the simple answer is no, they can't.
You might have to provide a little bit of an explanation. I think your answer tallies with my instincts, but how would we prove it?
So we see by light reflecting.
Of course we do.
And when light reflects back, we can see features, but the lowest wavelength of light we can see back, which is called the diffraction limit, is around about 200 nanometers. So anything in that scale or that size is too small to reflect light back to our eyes.
So you wouldn't be able to see it anyway?
No.
Ever? Nothing would. No eye would be able to see it because they wouldn't be able to see the light, because the light wouldn't be reflecting back off the object or the organism or the tiny little microscopic thingamy.
Well, the light would, to a certain extent, but so little of it would be reflecting back, you couldn't resolve it. You wouldn't see it. So even in the best optical microscopes with glass lenses, you can probably see something 1,000 times bigger.
Okay.
But even that's big cells. That's not microscopic organisms like bacteria and viruses.
Qualifications?
I'm an electron microscopist, so I use an electron microscope to look at bacteria and viruses.
Microscopist.
Microscope, electron microscopist.
I said microscopist. Microscope.
Yes, sir.
With an an electron microscopist. What do you do all day?
Listen to LBC and cut up tiny little sections of plastic embedded tissue.
Is it?
And viruses and exosomes. Exosomes are huge at the minute.
Wow.
So
how amazing! Well, approximately how many electron microscopists do you think there are working in the UK at the moment?
All universities would have one. So
really?
There's quite a lot of us.
Oh, that's a shame. I wanted to give you a Ray Liotta, Neil. You should have just said me.
Oh, no.
And also, why did I say the UK? You're not even in the UK. You're in Ireland.
Dublin,
So, no, sorry, but I can't give you a thingamy, but I can give you this.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Thank you, Neil. Georgina's in Wimbledon. Georgina, question or answer?
It's a question, James.
Carry on.
So I suffer from watery eyes, so I made an appointment at the optician's, and she said I suffer from a dry eye.
Yes.
How is that if I've got watery eyes?
How do you mean?
Well, my eyes keep watering
Yes.
all the time. So when I went for my consultation, she said, you suffer from dry eyes.
Yeah, but that's why your eyes water all the time.
Why?
Well, no, you only have one question. So you've got dry eyes, which is why they water.
Water dry?
Dry water.
But I'm wiping the tears away.
Because you've got the dry eyes, the watery eyes is a response to the dry... I'm making this up as I go along, Georgina, but I think I'm onto something. The watery eyes dry... The water is a response to the dry eyes that you suffer from.
It's quite confusing then, isn't it?
Well, yes, it is a little bit confusing, but what do you want me to do? Why? What have you got? So why, if you've got dry eyes, why are your eyes so watery?
Yeah.
Well, I think you've got it. It's a chicken and egg situation, this, Georgina. Isn't it? What came first, the water or the dryness?
True.
So you've got the dryness, therefore your eyes are watering a lot. But we need an ophthalmologist. Why didn't you ask them?
I just didn't think at the time.
No. All right, you're on. Dry eyes.
I thought I'd ask you.
Dry eyes plus water. Why? How can you have dry eyes when you've got watery eyes? That's the question, really.
That's the question, yeah.
Lovely stuff. Thank you, Georgina.
Thanks.
No, thank you. 24 minutes after 12. Why can you have dry eyes and watery eyes at the same time? Denise is in Haywards Heath. Denise, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on.
So, the coronation weekend, we went down to Devon to see my parents, and we were driving back to Haywards Heath, coming along the A3. And my son said, "Oh, look, Mama, we're 150 miles from London." But whereabouts in London, at what point would be 150 miles? Would it be like the Shard or Buckingham Palace?
Charing Cross.
Is it?
Yeah. Charing Cross.
No.
It is.
Because?
Well, you're only allowed one question. It is. It's Charing Cross, isn't it? There's the cross outside Charing Cross Station. It's Charing Cross. That's where they measure it all from.
So if I was going back and it was 150 miles to Exeter, what point in Exeter?
No. You're only allowed one question. You're only allowed one question. It is Charing Cross. We've had this before. In fact, I think I knew this before I even invented Mystery Hour. Because I wanted to know. It's got. I mean, the crosses, there was something to do with a dead queen and a pilgrimage that her husband undertook. Maybe Eleanor of Aquitaine. I'm making that up. But the centre of London from which you measure all the other distances, when you're driving from Birmingham and it says London is 200 miles away, then it is Charing Cross. You can tell. I mean, you can actually tell, because if I'm coming home from East Anglia, London, or if I'm coming home from Kidderminster, because they're coming into London from completely different angles, then getting home is completely different, if you see what I mean, because of the distance that I live from Charing Cross coming into different contexts. But that's the answer.
Okie dokie.
No, I'm taking a round of applause for that.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, Denise. Excellent question. Let's get Kevin in Colchester on. Where were we, Kevin?
Hello, James.
Hello.
My question is, most people with Tourette's, why when they tick, they swear, like naughty words or say bad words? Why don't they
that's a good question. They do sometimes.
Yeah.
They can say completely innocuous words. But this week's guest on Full Disclosure has Tourette's. She's one of the most amazing young people that I've ever met. And you'll I think, hear her in the interview. She doesn't do. I don't think she did swear words while we were there. But the question, I don't know. And I don't think it would be appropriate to speculate, do you?
No idea. It's just a few of the documentaries I've seen.
Yes,
of the people that sort of have this condition, they usually say naughty words.
The tics involve naughty words. They often involve naughty words. I wonder why that is. I wonder if anybody knows. But it's a responsibly asked question, and it is an intriguing one. And it's a complete coincidence that Evie May is on Full Disclosure tomorrow. That'll be released tomorrow. She's an incredible young woman, truly incredible. Thank you, Kevin. That's a cracking question. 27 after 12. Donald's in Rochester. Donald, question or answer?
It's an answer.
Carry on.
Okay, so your lady with dry eyes, whose eyes keep watering all the time, the reason being is that tears are actually quite complicated in their makeup. They've got different layers. There's an oily layer, a watery layer, a greasy layer. And the reason why her eyes are watering all the time is because she's lacking the oily layer. So the eye itself, the actual surface of the eye, the cornea and the conjunctiva, is not being sufficiently protected. So it feels that it's dry.
Right.
Which is the reason why she's producing so many tears.
Yes.
It's very watery, but it's lacking...
it's the wrong kind of moisture.
It's the wrong kind of moisture, yeah. British rail tears.
So Georgina is lacking a greasy layer.
Correct.
You live and learn. And so she has got a diagnosis of dry eyes, and that is why she's producing too much thin liquid when what she needs is the more viscous, greasy layer on her eye to protect
You have got it, yes.
That's a wonderful answer, which is not a million miles away from where I was sort of groping around in the dark. What I just didn't know about the greasy layers. What are your qualifications, Donald?
I'm a dispensing optician, and it's Ronald.
Is it? So it's Ronald in Rochester?
Yes.
Not Donald in Dorchester. I thought it was Donald in Dorchester. Sorry, Ronald. Can we change that, please? Because otherwise, next time he rings in, it will come up as Donald again, and I'll be rude. Round of applause for Ronald, please.
Bless you. Thank you very much.
It's a lovely answer, beautifully done, and you've introduced the phrase "greasy layer" into proceedings, which is something for which I'm also grateful, or at least my inner schoolboy is. It's coming up to 12:30. Shall I squeeze in one more? I think we can, can't we? Let's go to Joe, who's in Lisbon. Do you know, Joe, that you don't count on Radar? Did you? Well, because you don't. It doesn't count. People listening overseas. So we've had Dublin, Australia, and Lisbon today. So that's about 40%. No, 30% of today's callers who don't even count for Radar.
I listen to you every day.
I know. Well, I'm very grateful, but you don't count. We've got to do something about this, Joe. We've got to make you matter more. Question or answer?
It's a question.
Carry on.
We've got a rescue dog who, because of diabetes, has gone completely blind.
Oh, no. I'm sorry.
Now, but he's really, really gentle with adults, with humans, with children, with other dogs, until he comes across a French bulldog.
Oh. What, the same one?
Sorry?
The same one?
No, he's a Breton. He's a Brittany Spaniel.
Yeah.
And as soon as a French bulldog comes within 2 foot of him, it's like we've got a Rottweiler.
Is that right? Any old French bulldog? I mean, how many French bulldogs do you bump into in Lisbon?
Well, it's not just Lisbon. We travel around in a motorhome.
Oh, do you really? How exciting.
Yeah.
So any French bulldog at all will set him off and nothing else does?
Yeah. That's the only dog. Big dogs, Alsatians, nothing he'll run away from. But it's like you've got a tiger when a French bulldog comes along.
Well, I never.
And he can't see them.
Clearly.
So... do they recognise other breeds through sense alone?
Is that what we're asking? Can they smell out? Can your dog? What's his name?
His name's Bertie.
Bertie?
Yeah.
Can Bertie smell French bulldogs?
Well, can he smell? Because he knows it's only a French bulldog he does it to.
Well, I never.
And like I say, he's such a little lamb. Yeah. And it's just like we've got a Rottweiler.
Has he ever had a bad experience with a French bulldog? Do we know? Back in the day when he was a little puppy?
No. I mean, he was a rescue dog.
We don't know then.
Young.
We don't know then.
We got him very, very young. I think he was only about 6 months when we got him. Never, ever had a problem apart from we were in a bar the other day and a French bulldog come in. Yeah. And it was just like we've got a...
Bertie, calm down, Bertie. It's all right, Bertie, you said, didn't you? There's a text there. A text has just come in. My spaniel is exactly the same. Whenever he sees a French bulldog, he's not blind. But it's just the French Bulldog that sets them off. I mean, they have
It's a French Bulldog, and he's blind, so he can't see the dog.
I worked that bit out when you told me he was blind, Joe. There's an astonishing... I mean, they do have, our little one, what is going on in their brain when they're sniffing is just off the charts, isn't it? You've got no idea about the level of detail that is being conveyed purely through smell. But But can they identify a specific breed of dog through smell alone is the question, I think.
Yeah.
You're on. Let's find out. Maybe you've got an amazing dog. You might have an amazing dog. You could get him on Crufts. Or doing a bit an odd one. Anyway, we're on. How does it work? Dogs, recognition, Bertie, smell, French Bulldogs, 12:32. Amelia Cox has your headlines.
Mystery Hour with James O'Brien. This is LBC.
12:36 is the time, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Shall I run through the questions? Do we need answers? I'll run through the questions. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll run through the questions. Do birds get better at building nests as they get older? Boom. We've done that one. That was a good question. What's the name of the electron microscope? No, Heather asked the question. Who answered it? Neil in Dublin. We like that. The Chinatown. Why is Chinatown often next door to the gay village? Not always, but often. Why do people with Tourette's often deploy naughty words during their tics as opposed to, non-naughty words? Why do we call it a birthday when it's not a birthday? Why do we celebrate birth anniversaries, if you see what I mean? How can Mark never wake himself up with his snoring, even though if you went into his bedroom and made the same decibels yourself, you'd wake him up in a moment? Can you see data? Is there any way in which you can see data when a phone pings its location to a satellite or whatever? Can you ever see? Is there any way you could actually physically see it through software or technology? I like that question, but I think the answer is probably no. What do babies dream of? We've sorted out Georgina's dry eye. It's all about the greasy layer. And we're not talking about Nigel Farage. It's about opticians and eyes. And can a dog smell another dog? Because Bertie, Joe's dog, is blind, but goes a bit bonkers whenever a French Bulldog saunters into the bar. And on we go. Ian's in Biggleswade. Ian, question or answer?
Right, it's a question, but be gentle with me, mate. I've already been interrogated by your star.
Good. I know they can't let through any old. They can't let through any old Tom, Dick, or Ian.
Right, okay. We'll move on, right? So why can we not resist the temptation to keep going back to a place to find something you lost?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Be gentle.
Well, I'm sorry about that. I've got a crack team of operatives.
She was lovely.
Yeah.
She was lovely.
No, I know.
You know what I mean?
I know, but you're just making sure that we knew exactly what the question was, that you were focused, that you were paying attention. So you've lost your keys.
Oh, anyway, not spoken to you in a few years. You all right?
I'm all right. Yeah. Where have you been? What have you been up to?
Well,
ducking and diving.
I moved away from London.
Right, to Biggleswade, was it?
Well, obviously, Jim. Yeah. Because I'm in Biggleswade.
You saw through my little ruse there, Ian.
Worst thing I ever did. But never mind. Are you going to get me an answer to this question? And you know the Tourette's question you got?
Yeah, you're not allowed to answer it.
No. I wish I went for that one because that's been bothering me for a long time.
Well, it's a good question, isn't it? It's an interesting one. I'll find out. Well, I hope I'll find out for you. What are you
going to find out? Tourette's?
Both of them. But for you specifically, it would be why, when you've lost something, do you go and look in a place you've already checked? Really, is what we're saying.
Yes.
I like that question. And it's very. Do you know what's
Thank
even
you
more?
very much, because it took me a long time to get it across.
So I gather. I'll tell you what annoys me, Ian.
Yeah, go on.
And I'm very, very happily married. If I had to list the things about Mrs. O'Brien that mildly irritate me, it would be a very, very short list. I know that on her list, it would be that I lose things all the time. At one point last week...
Keys, bank card, and phone.
I'm all right on the phone. I've got one of those pingers now.
I'm terrible with a phone.
So at one point last week, I was missing my woolly hat, my beard trimmer, my sunglasses, which have got a prescription lens in them, and there was one other thing as well. There were 4 things I was missing. I'd even reached the point where I was offering cash rewards to the kids if they could find them. Beard trimmer, sunglasses, woolly hat. There's one other thing as well. I can't even remember what it was. And I'll ask her where things are, and that obviously irritates her a lot. But do you know what she often says? So if I say, "Have you seen the keys?" she'll say, "Have you looked in the key pot?" And I'm like, "Of course I've looked in the blooming key pot. It's the first place I've looked." If I say I've lost my hat, she say, "Have you looked on the hat stand?" Of course I've looked on that. So that I find that very mildly irritating, Ian. I just thought I'd share that with you, mate.
No, it's all right. Yeah. And with lots of people that are listening, can I ask a question about your woolly hat?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah.
Well, it ain't a beanie, is it?
No, it's not. It's a nice sort of. It's got a bit of cashmere in it. It's a smart. That's why I was so.
Stop showing off.
No, I'm not showing off. I'm just establishing its non-beanie credentials. It's a nice.
Oh, okay. Because I like a woolly hat, but it's got to be like a fisherman's hat.
Yeah, exactly
or like
that.
A docker's hat.
Yeah, that's what it's like. Except with a bit of cashmere.
Because if you got to wear a hat, you got to style it up a little bit. Haven't you?
I love it a lot. I love my hat. I'm a big hat fan, especially as my hair disappears. I find hats more and more pleasant. You're on. Thank you. Why do you always go and look again in the place that you've already looked when you've lost something? There's there'll be a psychological answer to that question. Paul's in Bowness in Scotland. Paul, question or answer?
I'm sorry, James. It's a pedantic inquiry.
Right, come on then.
Well, the centre of London. You're close, but I can give you more specifics.
Yeah, go on then. Eleanor of Aquitaine was correct, apparently.
Well, this Charles I, the statue of Charles I, right in front of Trafalgar Square, which looks down towards Parliament. That is the centre of London. That's where all the road markings all count to that sign.
Are you serious? Where did I get Charing Cross from? Where did I get Charing Cross from then?
Well, you're close. You're only about 200 metres. That makes a difference.
What are your qualifications?
My qualifications are about 10 years ago, I made a documentary called Secrets of the City for ITV with Griff Rhys-Jones.
Oh, that'd be nice.
It was a good show.
Yeah, I bet. I like Griff Rhys-Jones. He was doing something the other day, and I thought that was very enjoyable. Anyway, I digress.
He's an old pal. We did, one of the items was about that very thing, and we filmed at a very little mini roundabout and spoke about it. And I tell everyone whenever I'm travelling around London all my facts and figures, and you contradicted one of them on national radio.
Yeah, no, and you couldn't let it lie. I am actually, in my own defence, that is where the original Charing Cross was. No, it's true.
Really?
Yes. But, so you're talking about the statue of King Charles on the south side of the square.
I am.
Behind which a small plaque lies.
Yes.
Marking the official centre of London and the original site of the Charing Cross.
Are we going to split a clap?
Oh, I think we should. I'm up for that if you are.
I'm down for that.
Okay, which half do you want? The first half or the second half?
I think the second half could ring longer. Let's go for the second half for me.
All right, let's see how this works out. Oh, yeah, you did. You got a bit more than me there. I wasn't expecting that at all. That's grossly unfair. I demand a recount. Lovely stuff. Thank you. And you're absolutely right. I didn't. There it is. So both right and wrong at the same time. It's a miracle. Thank you, Paul. Glenn's in Basildon. Glenn, question or answer?
Answer. Birthdays. Why do we call them birthdays?
Yes.
Okay, so there's two contenders for the word birthdays, both being Old English. You had the word bird and stuff. And it looks like in the Middle English period, those two words combined to create the word birth.
Oh, yeah.
So saying happy birthday in Old English, you'd say, Yastali, your birthday to thee. Happy birthday to thee. Why do we wait for the anniversary? Well, first of all, anniversary comes to us by French anyway, the word.
Anniversary.
But culturally, it's probably down, why do we wait so long? It's high mortality rates among children during the Middle Ages.
Good grief. Yeah. So you're celebrating almost survival.
Yeah, pretty much.
How much? Because Glenn, for people who don't know, is my sort of go-to man for actual Anglo-Saxon and the low. Is it the low languages? Is that the right phrase to use?
Well, it's Old English.
Yeah.
Anglo-Saxon is Old English, so it's basically a form of High German.
How far into a conversation, if you could find someone else that speaks it, how far would you get, do you reckon?
Oh, God, I can pick out about every one word in three.
Is that all?
Ish. Yeah, because obviously apparently my pronunciations are quite good.
Yeah, I thought that.
I don't have the ear for it.
Why not?
I don't know.
Just the way it goes.
I'm still trying. I mean, I can recite stuff. Once I've heard it, I can recite it. But obviously, when you hear people speak it quite fast, if you watch shows like Vikings, for example,
yes,
they often go between Old Danish and Old English, and I can pick similarities between the both.
You can tell when they're doing it correctly. It's all there.
But I mean, it's nice being like that. Every time I can pick it up, I'll do a little jump up and down dance. You know what I mean?
I bet you do. Yeah, no, fascinating. It's got you another round of applause. Anyway, you've got a few.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. Lovely stuff.
Take care, mate.
Thank you. 12:45 is the time.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien.
12:49 is the time. Got to pick a winner. There's still quite a lot that need answers, aren't there? Babies' dreams. Dogs. Can dogs smell specific species? Why do you go back to the place you've already looked in when you lose stuff? Is data ever visible? Is there any software that lets you see data? How come your own snoring doesn't wake you up when it's loud enough to wake the dead? Tourette's and the propensity of people's tics to involve rude words. Done the birthday one, kind of done the birthday one. We did do the birthday one. Glenn nailed the birthday one. I like the nests one. Is anyone going to have a go at the nests one? Do birds get better at building nests as they get older? You've only got 8 or 9 minutes to get in on that one. James is in Stockport. James, question or answer?
Hi, James, you all right?
I'm grand. How are you?
Hey there, yeah, I've got an answer, please, for the gay village and the Chinatown question.
Go on, then.
So there's two bits to this. So firstly, immigrants will usually pick the cheapest and most run-down areas of the city. Not always, but
for fairly obvious reasons.
Absolutely. So Chinatown usually comes first, and then what happens is, historically, going back into usually the noughties and the 90s, using Canal Street as an example in Manchester.
Yes.
The gays were seen as using something called the pink pound. So because they had a lot of money, you were onto that one there. So they will regenerate the area. And the reason it gets regenerated is because women usually feel safer in that environment. And then through time, as it becomes more and more popular, it becomes gentrified. And before you know it, you've got everyone using it. So that's usually how it happens.
You have now, especially. Example. No, it's a lovely example. I know Canal Street. I know that better than I know Birmingham. And part of it, just to add to your answer, is it was a time when discrimination was so bad that you needed bars and nightclubs that were exclusively gay, even though you might get straight women in there. For the reasons you've touched on, it was somewhere where gay men could be confident they weren't going to get. Well, first of all, that they could, try and cop off with someone, and second of all, not get victimised, not get exposed to homophobic abuse. So you've got to open somewhere from scratch. You're going to go to the part of town that the immigrants have gone to, more or less, for the same reasons.
Well, I'm coming at it from a planning and regeneration point of view. So that my qualifications are I did a master's in town planning. I'm a town planner.
I love it.
We actually focused on Canal Street as a case study.
What year would you say that started?
I think it started in the early noughties, around sort of 03, 04.
No.
And then
it was before that. It was before. It was, when did Manto open? I used to go to Manto.
I'm only 36.
Well, I was there in the early 90s. Manto opened.
There you go.
I think Manto might have been the first bar to. And then there was a night called Fruit at the Brick House on Whitworth Street that was. Not actually.
To be fair, my degree was in 2010, so it could have been ages ago.
Making me feel old, but you've got the right answer. Because I lived in Chorlton with two gay lads, so I'd often go out with them because the quality of the dance music, the DJs were better than they were.
My missus loves it, so we end up having one in there before the train at Piccadilly to come home. Because I live halfway between Manchester and Sheffield, so it's always one, and then ends up being three, and you think you see some right sights down there.
It's got you a round of applause, James. Beautifully done.
Excellent.
Thank you. Gavin's in concert in County Durham. Gavin, what would you like to say? Question or answer?
It's an answer.
Carry on.
It's about newborn dreaming.
Oh, yes.
So, first of all, newborns spend about 18 hours a day asleep, and half of that time in REM, that's rapid eye movement sleep, which it correlates very closely with dreaming.
Yes.
Then the question of the content. So there are theories, and people have written about them having zero content because they have no identity yet. But actually, there's another insight into this, and that is right from the beginning of being newborn, you have a massive conflict, and that is whether to eat or breathe.
Really?
And as soon as when you're first given the opportunity of eating, drinking milk, it's a pretty big conflict for the children, and they have to work out how to do both at once, or how to, interweave the two skills, because it's a new challenge. So that is quite stressful. So I think the idea that a kid actually has got nothing happening, and there is no stress or strain, is probably wrong. And then finally, quite often, because you go between the various stages of sleep, between REM sleep and stages 1 to 4 of non-REM, a newborn will wake up stressed, crying or whatever, and it's probably to do with that stress that it's already experienced right from the first attempt
Well,
at
isn't
feeding.
that interesting? No, because it is the first... Yeah, of course. Qualifications?
Well, I'm a retired consultant anaesthetist, but I spent about 40 years monitoring brain function. So you kind of get into thinking of what's happening, in the brain.
Yeah, of course you do. That's really good. That's a fascinating answer. Thank you, Gavin. So
Sure.
the dreams would reflect that tension, that conflict, really.
Probably. I think it's probably more than having a sense of identity. It's what the newborns are all struggling with. It's a major issue for them.
Well, we'll never know for sure, but it's more than enough to get a round of applause. Lovely stuff.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Gavin. God, what a clever bunch we've got today on Mystery Hour. It's just me letting the side down. 12:55. Adam's in Forest of Dean, the Forest of Dean. Adam, question or answer?
It's an answer, James.
Carry on, mate.
To the Tourette's question.
Yes.
As to why do people with Tourette's swear?
Often.
Well, they may do, but it's not that common.
No.
So the vast majority of tics are physical. There are obviously vocal tics, and of the vocal tics, a very small percentage of those come out in swearing.
Yes.
So I imagine
we notice it more.
They just it makes the best TV shows, doesn't it?
There may be some
if you're
truth
looking
in
into it.
Yes, there may be some truth in it.
Yeah, a TV show, somebody blinking or pushing their fingers together or swallowing or something may not make the best.
There is an argument that the brain actually seeks out words that are shocking, words that offend us. But I think even if that were true, you're right to remind us that actually it's a rarity, and the much more common tics are the physical ones, and even if they are verbal, they're not going to be rude words. They're not going to be swear words.
And my daughter's got Tourette's, and and she has a few.
How old is she?
Ones, but she is 16.
16. Does she know? Does she follow Evie May on TikTok? Are you familiar? Evie Meg.
Evie Meg.
Yeah.
No. I heard you saying.
Have a look at tomorrow's Full Disclosure.
Okay.
And because it'd be just to feel seen.
Okay.
I think it will mean quite a lot to her. And you get a round of applause. It feels a bit trivial in the circumstances, but hey ho. Thank you, Adam. And it wasn't Eleanor of Aquitaine; it was Eleanor of Castile, of course. Just to, I like to clarify. I like to correct the record before I clock off for the day. Ross is in Birmingham. Question or answer, Ross?
I got an answer.
Carry on, mate.
Hi, it's about whether you can see mobile phone signals, data travelling, whether it's possible to perceive it.
Yes.
No.
No, I didn't think so.
So,
it's a shame, really. But if you could, we probably would have known about it.
Well, you could model it. If you knew where your signal was going from and going to, you could just draw a line. And I'm sure there's websites that do that.
But you wouldn't be able to actually see the data.
You can't actually see it.
See the ping.
Yeah, that's because wireless communication is done through infrared, through electromagnetic radiation, radio waves, infrared, so forms of light. And I'm going to be a typical scientist here and give you a model. If I were to shine a torch across your field of vision, so not into your eyes, directly perpendicular, if there was no dust in the way, nothing reflecting that light, you would not perceive that light at all.
No.
Because it's not reflecting off anything going into your eye. And, if you had an eye that could detect radio waves and you did the same thing, you couldn't see it. So, a satellite, you couldn't have a satellite do it anyway because radio waves don't leave the atmosphere like that. So it's impossible.
It's all there. Qualifications?
A-level physics, and I'm a practicing scientist. I phoned up and answered your question about can birds see ultraviolet light and all that sort of thing. I know way too much about light perception.
No, you can't know too much about light perception. Seriously, the alternative is darkness. Round of applause for Ross. Can I squeeze in one more? Keith in Beckham? No, I can't really. Keith, we'll come back to it next week. That's it from me for another day. What? I'm about to announce the ball game winner. Give me a chance. Seriously, honestly, just from all out. I don't know. Have you got one? I'm going to give it to. Oh, I can't. She's in Lisbon in a motorhome. Let's give it to Glenn if he hasn't got one already. If he has got one already, then I'll pick again. But Glenn, our Anglo-Saxonist, and if it's that'll do. That's it from me for another day. We'll do it all again on tomorrow morning from 10. I think I'm broadcasting live from Manchester in the morning, actually. So,
what's going on?
I don't know, just excitement. I'm doing some work with a charity up there. Here's Sheila Fogarty, whose radars are off the charts.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to catch up with you and Nick Ferrari, and you keep, honestly, it's like that annoying girl in the 400 metres who would always be a little bit faster.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Any minute now.
Any minute now. You just relax.
Exactly.
You 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 relax.